Lord of Mystery. I traveled through time and became Amon's clone by author Li Meng Zhen. Chapter 126 to 150. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And those who want to support me, I have a Patreon channel. Get early access to video on Patreon. Chapter 126. Would you like to apply for a card? Chapter 126. Would you like to apply for a card? As the meeting progressed, Mr. Fool's heart couldn't help but grow anxious. Until now, the hanged man hadn't asked him about the attendance account. Would he forget about those £1,000? Should I subtly remind him? Just as he was pondering how to speak up, a voice like heavenly music suddenly reached his ears. Honorable Mr. Fool, is it convenient for you to provide the attendance account now? Looking at the £3,700 in the Backland Bank anonymous account, Li Meng felt as if a lifetime had passed. When he first left the forsaken land of the gods, he took a ship from Bayam to Backland. To save money, number 1011 found him an incredibly slow cargo ship, which led him to meet Alger, obtain that bottle, and join the Tarot Club. If it had been a proper passenger ship, it would have sailed out of the waters around Bayam long ago. Even if Alger dared to catch up, the armed forces on the passenger ship and the large number of Lord of Storm's believers would have made him hesitate to act. Now holding £3,700, he could afford first-class tickets for 70 round trips. That doesn't sound like much. If the expenses for purchasing Sequence 6 potion materials were included, this money was only just enough. Li Meng's excitement faded instantly. Likely sensing that the client before him was dazed, the bank manager sitting across the table asked tentatively. "Sir, would you like to apply for a membership card?" That familiar tone instantly made Li Meng feel like he was back on the streets before his transmigration, facing those well-dressed salesmen. What are the benefits of membership? Li Meng looked at the middle-aged bald man in a gray formal suit with slight interest. After becoming our Blue Card member, you can obtain higher interest on deposits and larger loan limits. The bald bank manager, Bol, wiped the sweat from his forehead and leaned forward slightly, speaking in a very trusting tone. Originally, a Blue Card membership required a deposit of £5,000 for at least a year, but I can help you apply in advance, as long as you deposit the sufficient amount within the agreed time. The quota is limited, and I don't have many spots left. Such familiar words. As expected, the routines are the same everywhere. Seeing that Li Meng didn't seem to care much, Manager Bol tightened his tie and said with a hint of anxiety. Our Blue Card members can join certain clubs, such as the Backland Middle Class Family Club, where the entry threshold is a blue card. There are many other clubs that can be entered with our membership card. Goddamn Middle Class Family Club. More sweat appeared on bald Bol's forehead, large drops dripping from his smooth, reflective brow. If you apply for our Blue Card membership, I can introduce you to some influential figures, such as certain bank shareholders, loan business managers, and even dinner invitations for some nobles. Your business is quite extensive. Li Meng suddenly became interested, calmly putting the money he had just withdrawn into his wallet. As if to count the bills better, he pulled a red glove from his inner pocket and put it on his right hand. The soul of the Dream Stealer quietly activated, and Li Meng's eyes became deeper. Watching the client count money, Bol's head seemed to grow heavier. His large head jerked forward uncontrollably, resting on his chest as he fell into a deep sleep. In his dream, he had successfully issued several more Blue Card memberships and was promoted to hall manager of Backland Bank with an annual salary of £1,000. He fired every employee from Backland Bank who mocked his hair or even just lingered their gaze on his head for a few seconds too long. Just as he was happily counting his salary, ordering interns from the Backland Financial Institute who had just joined the bank to serve tea, massage his shoulders, and scolding them in the tone of an experienced veteran, these employees suddenly disappeared. Bol searched around in a panic. This sudden movement caused his head to jerk forward heavily, waking him instantly from his dream. I actually fell asleep just now. And had a dream. That dream felt really good. I want to experience it again. I might really be too tired lately, to the point of falling asleep at work. Bol reflected while quietly wiping the drool off his shirt and the folder. I wonder if I'll scare off the client. Just as Bull was worrying about this, he saw the young man sitting opposite him, observing him with interest. "Give me a blue card membership." "Certainly, sir. Please fill out these details, and I'll process it for you immediately." Bull hurriedly organized the documents, pulled a paper printed with various sized boxes from a pile of files, and handed it to Li Meng. Religious belief, home address, source of income. Li Meng looked at the form, his brow furrowing involuntarily. Bull, who had been quietly observing, immediately whispered, "Those can be filled out however you like or left blank, it's bank policy. As long as there are enough pounds, none of that matters. What matters is the money. Today is August 20th. You must ensure that by December, there are £5,000 in the bank account. In January of next year, these funds can be withdrawn and used normally. This is the only mandatory condition. I think you should be able to understand." Bull carefully observed the young man's expression but found he couldn't read anything. He took the completed form from the young man and found only one line written on it. Name, Julius. Bull shook his head helplessly, picked up a black fountain pen from the table, and filled in the empty boxes one by one. "Do you know Gao Jia weak husband?" the young man asked very casually as he took off the red glove and tucked it into his coat. "He is a shareholder of Backland Bank, not someone a clerk like me can interact with. He comes every now and then to check the accounts and conduct business. We see him, but we don't talk. If you need to buy or sell land, or get a mortgage, I can introduce you." Bull's voice suddenly became mysterious, and he even leaned closer to Li Meng. "Did you know? He seems to have provoked a baron's daughter recently. I heard the baron's daughter is exceptionally beautiful and instantly stole Gao Jia's soul. Now, Gao Jia's wife doesn't allow him to go out alone anymore. He hasn't been here for nearly half a month. All right, here is your membership card. Please keep it safe. If it's lost, getting a replacement is very troublesome and may even require rechecking all the accounts." Bull's voice returned to normal as he handed over an exquisite blue card with both hands. The front of the card featured a miniature of Backland and the wide Tassoc River behind it. Chapter 127, Silly Dog. Mr. A is actually an oracle of the Aurora Order, and he even dreams of destroying the world. Should I tell Father and the Church of the Goddess of Night? Audrey Hall looked at the paper on her dressing table containing the psychiatrist potion formula, beginning to consider how to handle the gains from this tarot club meeting. She had spent quite a bit of money this time, more than she had originally intended. But for some reason, after witnessing that scene at Viscount Glaint's dinner party, she had felt a lingering unease in her heart. It was only after transferring £3,700 into the Hanged Man's anonymous account that she felt somewhat at peace. She needed to quickly sell the apothecary and trickmaster formulas to make her bank account look a bit more presentable. For the best experience reading Taiwan novels, look for the most convenient source. As for whether to report the matter regarding Mr. A, Audrey thought it over and decided it wasn't necessary for the time being. After all, it was just something the Hanged Man had mentioned in passing. There was no concrete evidence. If Mr. Fool found out, he would surely be angry. While she felt Mr. Fool wouldn't get angry over such a trivial matter, she also felt she shouldn't do it. At this thought, a very blasphemous idea suddenly popped into her head. Between Mr. Fool and the Evernight Goddess, who was actually more powerful? She had been influenced by her parents since childhood and began believing in the Evernight Goddess. However, until she joined the Tarot Club, she lacked a real impression of deities. But now that there was Mr. Fool, who was suspected of being a deity, could the Evernight Goddess also be a true deity like Mr. Fool? Mr. Fool, Evernight Goddess. Mr. Goddess. Audrey's thoughts drifted further and further. Suddenly, the image of Viscount Glaint gazing intensely at Lady Elena surfaced in her mind, and an even more blasphemous thought uncontrollably escaped. Fortunately, her years of devout faith finally saved her, pulling her back from her chaotic thoughts. She lowered her head slightly, tapped her chest firmly 4 times, and began a devout confession. After a long while, she raised her head again and looked at herself in the mirror. "Audrey, what are you thinking? You are a mature young lady now. You can't project those fairy tale stories of princes and princesses onto deities. That is blasphemy. The world I live in is a wonderful and exciting Deander world, not some juvenile romance plot from a novel. I must pay attention to this and not make similar mistakes again." It would be very embarrassing if Mr. Fool noticed. But Baron Raya's daughter really is quite beautiful. Audrey shook her head gently, as if trying to shake away the image of Elena from her mind. Only when Elena's image had completely vanished did Audrey maintain her spectator state and call out softly toward the door. Susie, are you still there? Audrey, what happened? You haven't come out of your room all afternoon. Your personal maid Annie came looking for you several times, she seemed quite anxious. Susie skillfully pushed open the door and trotted in on her 4 legs without making a sound. It's nothing, just some things I couldn't figure out. No, I think you're confused because of me. You seem unable to accept a talking dog, which makes our interactions particularly awkward. I didn't mean it like that, I just. Audrey rehearsed her wording in her mind. I just wanted to ask, do you have any wishes? For example, eating better meat, finding a handsome little male dog, running more freely. Or going into the mountains to hunt prey. Recalling the hanged man's advice, Audrey listed everything she could think of that a dog might want to do in one breath, then looked at Susie with satisfaction. Probably no one respects Susie more than I do, even personally asking it what it wants. No, my dear Audrey, you've misunderstood me. I have long since moved past those low-level interests. Susie started to wag her tail, but then felt it was inappropriate and switched to sitting half-crouched on the floor. I can feel that all these changes come from that potion you gave me. I have a feeling that if I drink more potion, I will become even smarter, perhaps even like you. I know you are also seeking things in this area. I hope we can help each other in the future and go further on this path. Heavens, are you really a dog? Why do you know so much? Audrey could no longer maintain her spectator state, and surprise was written all over her face. Don't look at me with those eyes, I know what you're thinking. As long as you stop treating me like a talking silly dog, everything will be fine. Susie originally wanted to squeeze out a smile, but her thick fur hindered her performance, so she could only wag her tail slightly in resignation. I won't, Susie. We've always been friends. It's just that I still need to adjust, you have to give me some time. You know this is indeed hard to accept. After a while, I'll get used to it. Audrey looked at Susie's wagging tail and suddenly felt a sense of strangeness. I'll be waiting for you. Susie propped up her 2 front legs, crossing them in front of her chest. Hillsden District, the kitchen of the Horneckus Highland Flavor Restaurant. A middle-aged man wearing a white formal suit, with leather shoes and hair so polished one could see their reflection, was standing in a spacious and bright kitchen, vigorously chopping large chunks of fish. Beside him stood several other chefs also dressed in white, their bodies trembling slightly with the man's chopping motions. This new apprentice chef had taken over all the tasks of killing fish and slaughtering sheep in one go. A hard-working and quiet colleague is always liked, even if he wears strange formal wear and leather shoes to work, looking nothing like a chef. As a way of looking after the newcomer, these chefs unhesitatingly handed over all the dirty and tiring work to him, letting him learn the kitchen experience well. And this new chef named Pomp had no objections. Instead, he proactively took over all the slaughtering and chopping of live animals. This allowed all the kitchen staff to enjoy a brief period of happiness. But happiness is fleeting, like a rabbit's tail brushing across an autumn prairie. Before long, these chefs with plenty of leisure time discovered that Mr. Pomp's slaughtering work was far too skillful. He always severed a fish head or cut a sheep's neck with a single stroke. No one had ever seen him use a second blow. His posture and the positioning for bloodletting were always exceptionally accurate and practiced. No one ever found a single drop of blood remaining in the meat. More importantly, every motion of his deboning and chopping, and the sound of the blade hitting the cutting board, gave these people a bizarre illusion. He wasn't chopping fish and sheep, but their own flesh and blood. The repetitive thuds of the kitchen knife on the board made their hearts race with fear the more they listened, as if the bodies lying there were their own. Chapter 128. I Don't Want to Die. Thud, thud 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 thud, thud, thud 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 thud. Amidst the sound that seemed to chop a person into pieces, one chef finally couldn't take it anymore. He covered his ears and ran out screaming. Another one's gone mad. An older chef leaned against a rack for hanging live poultry and spoke listlessly. Why does the manager still keep someone like that? A young chef whispered a complaint to the head chef beside him. He paid for his own training. Supposedly a graduate of the Backland Chef Academy, but he couldn't find a job, so he volunteered to pay to learn at our restaurant. The manager even wants to recruit a few more like him. Stop complaining, or watch out for getting fired. Just then, an attendant wearing a red vest walked in holding a note. A guest ordered a freshly slaughtered Hornick Highlands goat. It needs to be fresh, the faster and fresher, the better. The attendant glanced around, quickly handed the note to the nearest chef, and left the kitchen without looking back. Pomp, who was chopping fish, suddenly accelerated. After a dense flurry of chopping sounds like falling raindrops, he forcefully scraped the fish head and meat onto a plate. With a casual flick, the kitchen knife embedded itself into the thick pine cutting board. "Let me do it." As a familiar white light flashed, the goat's neck was severed from its body. Its eyes were wide and its lips slightly parted, as if it were about to let out a final tragic cry. Unfortunately, the completely severed esophagus could no longer build up air. This adult Hornick Highlands goat could only weakly open and close its mouth, making extremely faint gasping sounds. The chefs shrank their necks as if the blade would strike them in the next second. Everyone collectively shrank by 10 centimeters. With a practiced splash of blood, the goat was like a pile of fine sand blown by the wind, quickly disintegrating into a heap of meat and bones. However, the chefs watching silently all felt as if they were the goat being slaughtered. It wasn't until 8 p.m. that Pomp finished his day of hard work. Dressed in his spotless white formal wear, he slowly left the kitchen. With his departure, the kitchen instantly regained its vitality. The remaining chefs couldn't wait to start working, as if they hadn't done a thing all day. Pomp left the Hornick Highland Flavor restaurant and expertly boarded a trackless rental carriage. After a 7-minute ride costing 1 sol and 3 pennies, he arrived at a townhouse near a subway station. He skillfully took out his key to open the door, went to the second-floor bedroom, and stood before a large full-length mirror opposite the window. A thin crack split open from the man's chest, and then a pair of white, powerful arms reached out from within, pulling forcefully to both sides. Just like a zipper being pulled open, a young lady wearing no clothes at all crawled out from inside. The stiff formal wear lost its support and collapsed to the floor along with the man's skin. The lady walked over it without a care, stepping right on the nose of the human skin, leaving a complete footprint across the nose and face. It was no 3,333 Afia, but at this moment, she no longer looked like that little country girl who had just left the fishing village. She turned her head and gave a cold, indifferent glance at the crooked, somewhat dirty human skin on the floor before striding into the bathroom. While Afia was lazily lying in the bathtub, gently scrubbing her skin, she suddenly heard a series of urgent doorbells. Frowning deeply, sulfurous flames ignited across her body as she strode out of the bathroom and into the living room. The human skin still lay on the floor. Afia opened her arms and stretched her body. The skin grew back onto her like a piece of clothing. The white formal wear seemed to be manipulated by an invisible arm as it was fitted onto her. She looked in the mirror and used her hands to messily pull at her face a few times. The wrinkles and the footprint disappeared together, and she became young and cheerful once more. She walked quietly to a room on the second floor near the main entrance and looked down through the bay window. A very fashionably dressed young girl was pressing the doorbell hard. Since her back was to the moonlight, Afia couldn't see her face for the moment. Women are such a hassle. She walked down the stairs with a bit of impatience and peeked through the peephole. It was a girl from a stack of photos Pomp had shown her not long ago. Among a crowd of scantily clad girls with heavy makeup, her smile looked somewhat like she was crying. She opened the door slightly, and the girl, seemingly leaning her whole weight against the door panel, tumbled in through the crack and fell heavily to her knees before Afia, clutching her calves. "Mr. Pomp, save me. I don't want to die, I don't want to die." The girl's hoarse voice carried a sob. It was a desire for survival mixed with despair and pain. "Mr. Pomp, I don't want to die. Annie Chapman is dead, Elizabeth Stride is dead, and Catherine Eddowes is dead too." Afia tried to pull her leg away nonchalantly, but the girl held on tight, her whole weight pressing down. She could even feel the 2 masses of fat against her knees. She recalled the names on those photos in her mind and only spoke slowly after a moment. "Kylie, for this kind of thing, you should go to the police. What use is there in finding me?" Hearing Afia's slightly strange speech, the young girl, Kylie, instead held on even tighter. "It's no use. Lenny went to the police station yesterday and was only released this afternoon. She's covered in bruises and is acting like an idiot, not saying a single word. I went out to buy her some Phenopote noodles, but when I came back with them, she was already dead. Her chest was sliced open, and her neck was snapped. AFIA seemed to take an interest and said in a slightly raspy voice. Describe to me exactly how they died. The girl looked up at him, then lowered her head again, sobbing as she spoke in a low voice. Mr. Pomp, save me. I don't want to stay in that place anymore. A week ago, Annie Chapman was found dead in a ditch. Her face was bruised, many of her teeth were knocked out, and her neck had been cut twice. But the most cruel part was that her abdomen was sliced open, her intestines were dragged out, and the female infant she had been carrying for several months was also severely stabbed with a sharp blade. Not long after, Elizabeth Stride's body was found behind the fence of an apartment. Her throat was also slit, and she suffered an evisceration. Her intestines were flung over her right shoulder, and parts of her body and abdominal flesh had been cut away. I was terrified and didn't dare go out. But Madame Fionn forced us to go back to the streets to solicit customers. As a result, Catherine Eddowes died too. She was completely naked, had ligature marks on her neck, her chest and abdomen were sliced open, and her ears, nose, and cheeks on her face were also cut off. Chapter 129, Alcohol. Chapter 129, Alcohol. Please subscribe, please vote. Mr. Pomp, save me. Ms. Fionn is still forcing us to go out. I know the killer's next target is me. I don't want to die. Only you can save me. You were the one who brought me to Backland, you must be able to take me back. As long as you can keep me alive, I'll do anything. I was immature before, but from now on, I'll definitely listen to you. The girl named Kylie seemed to be clinging to AFIA with her entire body, unwilling to let go. Her colorful dress was covered in dust, and her face, heavily coated in makeup, was a mess from her tears. AFIA even felt that the human skin on her legs was on the verge of wrinkling and tearing under the girl's physical strength. If it were the original Pomp, he really wouldn't have been able to save you. AFIA forcefully lifted the girl's head, picking her up as if she were catching a fish. The girl was forced to release her grip on AFIA, looking as if she were struggling to breathe. Do you want to live? Kylie's feet were lifted off the ground. Unable to speak, she could only nod vigorously. Pelican Street, White Rose District, Pritz Harbor, the Warrior and the Sea, bar. The bar owner, Williams, was wiping glasses at the bar. This was the time when the hungover drunkards from the previous night had not yet woken up, and the next batch of hard-drinking pirates had not yet come ashore, giving the bustling bar a moment of peace and leisure. The tightly closed door of the bar was pushed open forcefully, and a burly man in a blue robe strode in, bringing with him a gust of the cold late August sea wind. He had long blue hair that curled like seaweed and eyes of the same dark color. His entire body radiated power and the aura of a storm. Alger, you've arrived quite quickly. It's been less than 2 days since the telegram was sent. Williams put down the glass and cloth in his hand and took down the largest oak beer mug from the rows of glasses hanging on the wall behind him. The oak mug had a narrow mouth and a wide base, resembling a small barrel. Lilanchi, and remember to add chili. Williams opened a beer barrel under the bar, scooped up a full ladle of deep red liquor, poured it into the mug, and coated the rim with fine chili powder. Alger took the mug and downed it in one go, slamming it heavily onto the bar. There wasn't a trace of intoxication on his face, as if it wasn't alcohol inside, but a mug full of air. Another one. Is the news you mentioned in the telegram true? Williams skillfully took the mug and refilled it, handing it to Alger without looking up. This is information I spent £100 to buy. A crew member of the Hurricane got drunk and let it slip unintentionally. Alger downed it again and placed the mug on the bar. It was discovered at Pritz Port. Williams refilled the drink. This time, he didn't apply pepper powder but instead added a sliced olive, speaking unhurriedly. Yes, that crew member was recognized while drinking at a bar in the harbor. This news can be confirmed as true. His exact words were, the captain has been away from the Hurricane for several days, but he didn't tell them where he was going. Alger put down the empty mug, frowned, and said with some hesitation. Why are you so sure he went to Backland? Perhaps he's just conducting a transaction at Pritz Port. Also, don't add olives anymore, I don't get drunk that easily. Williams removed the olive from the mug, refilled it with liquor, and placed it on the bar. This is the conclusion reached by several nearby intelligence merchants after collaborating. He hasn't made any moves in Pritz port, he's either lying low or has gone to Backland. After all, a pirate general wouldn't appear on shore for a long time for no reason. Alger drank the beer in the mug and asked with a hint of self-deprecation. Then, has my whereabouts been exposed? Williams gave a light chuckle, as if to comfort, yet also as if to mock. A pirate general is given importance wherever he appears. Just a single piece of information about them can sell for £100. As for your information, selling it for £12 would already be quite good. This is an opportunity. Vice Admiral Hurricane has left his ship, just like a fish leaving the sea. Alger's expression was somewhat lonely, his brows furrowed deeply as if he had remembered some unpleasant past event. It's a pity I obtained the blood of the ghost shark too late. I haven't fully mastered the power of a seafarer yet, so I'm no match for him. Alcohol. He put down the oak mug, which was empty once again, his voice sounding somewhat heavy. Williams prodded the barrel with a ladle and found that the full barrel of Lilanchi was now almost empty. He bent down with effort, scooped out the last mug of beer, and said earnestly, "You've already drunk 10 liters of Lilanchi. Do you want to continue? Those harbor patrols in Pritz aren't like the white grids of Backland. Your bounty isn't much, but it's enough for them to deploy a sailing ship of the line. Although you are powerful, there are also priests from the Church of Storms on their ships. We are pirates, in the end, we can't defeat them." Alger acted as if he hadn't heard, slamming the mug heavily onto the bar. Continue. When has Alger ever been afraid of the church or the military? Williams shook his head helplessly, opened another barrel of Lilanchi, and filled his mug. I know there is an irreconcilable hatred between you and Kilangos, but you are still young. You will surpass him sooner or later, there's no need to rush. Didn't you recently get the materials to advance? Wait a bit longer, perhaps Kilangos will die in Backland. After all, he still carries a bounty of £10,000. That's a fortune worth taking a risk for. Alger's face began to flush, his entire body radiating a faint air of intoxication and a sliver of anger. Kilangos is also very young. Alcohol. He drained the beer in the mug in one gulp and placed it in front of Williams. Williams really wanted to ask the young man in front of him how he knew Vice Admiral Hurricane was also very young, but sensing Alger's anger, he wisely kept his mouth shut and silently filled his mug with fine liquor. He was just an old man, a bar owner, an intelligence merchant, a middleman who profited by selling information to these captains. He had no intention of delving into the love-hate relationships of these pirates. The people who came to trade the blood of the ghost shark last time, do you have their identities and contact information? Can you contact them now? Alger took the mug and held it in his hand, seemingly remembering something. Those people should have some strength, especially in Backland. They might be useful. Williams looked at the ceiling and thought back carefully for a while before shaking his head slightly. He was meticulously disguised. Since then, we haven't seen him again. What a pity. Alger drained the beer in his mug one last time and strode out of the bar. Chapter 130, Luck. On the outskirts of Backland, along a broad street, a strange little church appeared at the end of the road. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary residential house, nothing special about it. A dockworker, dragging his weary body as he walked home after work, suddenly discovered this church. He remembered that this place was still a wasteland yesterday, covered in green grass, but today, for some unknown reason, it had turned into a church. Confused, he passed through the modest doorway and stepped into the somewhat cramped church. There was only one priest here. He was a warm and reserved middle-aged man, wearing a simple white robe, with a pale gold beard that almost covered the lower half of his face and light-colored eyes as clear as a child's. In front of this small church was a simple shrine, and inside was a man carrying a cross. Upon closer inspection, his face actually bore some resemblance to the priest's. The priest slightly raised his eyes, and a series of strange thoughts immediately surged into the dockworker's mind. This church had existed here for countless years, and he was its loyal believer. This was the temple of the Creator, living beings of any race and believers of any deity could enter. The worker immediately knelt before the divine statue and began to pray fervently. He had no memory of when he had started believing in this great deity, why he believed, or why he was familiar with all the deity's miracles and possessed all the knowledge of prayer. He devoutly repented to the great Creator, feeling utterly ashamed of his former belief in the evil deity of darkness. He lay prostrate on the ground, forehead pressed against the earth, as beads of sweat rolled down from his head. All betrayers are guilty. All who believe in them carry original sin from the moment of their birth. Only the great Creator can cleanse the sins of this world. Accompanied by the priest's amiable yet firm and steady voice, the dockworker felt that the original sin throughout his entire body had finally been washed clean. He looked up in joy, wanting to catch another glimpse of the priest, only to find that before him was still a patch of wild grass, and he was kneeling amidst weeds half a man's height. The dockworker stood up in a panic and looked around, but he could no longer see any sign of the priest or the church. He felt a bit strange and habitually wanted to reach out his right hand to trace the sign of the crimson moon on his chest and chant the honorable name of the Evernight goddess for comfort. The moment his fingertips touched his chest, his hand hesitated, forming another strange gesture, and a strange prayer escaped his lips. He didn't know where that gesture came from, nor did he know the meaning of that prayer. Forget it, better just go home. The worker strode away from the overgrown wasteland and never looked back. In the place he had left, that temple still stood tall. The priest, wearing a simple white robe with a warm and reserved expression, still stood before the altar. He pulled out a roll of coarse yellow linen paper and gently spread it on the table. As his right hand lightly caressed the coarse linen paper, lines of ancient Hermes script slowly emerged on the paper. The Augustus family's centuries-old rule over Loan began to teeter under the violent impact of Russell's Industrial Revolution. The kingdom of Loan will begin to fracture in this wave of revolution. Those stubborn conservatives have pushed forward the Nigan family to resist this trend of the times. The conflict between them is destined to be intense, cruel, persistent, and far-reaching. They are merely biding their time, letting this conflict become even more violent. This is a war that will affect all of Loan and even the northern continent, and it will surely trigger a new trend of the times. To make the trend of the times come more swiftly and violently, some sacrifices are necessary. A ferocious pirate has left the sea he depends on for survival for the sake of Duke Nigan's wealth. A cold-blooded devil has abandoned an identity used for decades to begin a bloodthirsty feast of slaughter. Duke Nigan will die very peacefully. Of course, for the trend of the times to arrive faster, more people will sacrifice their lives along with him. This is their fate, and also their luck. This is a logical progression of history, this is the trend of the times that I desire. The priest rubbed the coarse yellow linen paper for a long time. On the far right of the yellow paper, another line of blood-red text appeared. When madness, cruelty, greed, indulgence, indifference, and bloodthirstiness submerge the earth once more, he shall awaken and take everything back. The priest reached out his hands, preparing to roll up the paper. The moment his hand touched the text, he suddenly noticed the blood-red handwriting beginning to fade. He looked at the roll of coarse paper in confusion, watching the text on it gradually fade and disappear. Even the paper itself began to burn. The coarse linen paper burned rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, only ashes remained. Soon, those ashes also turned to dust and vanished into the air, as if they had never existed. The priest watched the ashes dancing in the air, and after a long while, he murmured to himself, "Tutor, have you still not given up?" The last ray of sunlight outside the window stretched longer and grew fainter, the church became increasingly dark. Just then, the priest's eyes caught a single golden hair on the altar. He gently picked up this yellow hair and looked at it for a long time. Backland Bridge District, a dark sewer. A tramp was rummaging for food. He had been hungry for a whole day. If he couldn't find a bite to eat, he might never wake up tomorrow. He rummaged patiently in the dark and filthy sewer for a long time, but found nothing. Just as he was about to give up and climb out of the sewer manhole to head to the next one, he suddenly found a tall man standing at the opening. The man had a distinctive broad jaw, and his brown hair was tied in an ancient warrior's bun behind his head. His dark green eyes seemed to hold a hint of a smile, yet they were exceptionally cold. His right hand wore a black glove, which looked particularly eerie under the light of the setting sun. The tramp instinctively fled downward, wanting to dive back into the sewer to escape the man before him. Though he didn't understand what was happening, his physical instinct told him to stay away from this man, or he would die immediately. The man with the ancient warrior's bun had a cruel smile on his lips. The black glove suddenly began to squirm as if it had a life of its own, and a layer of fine, dark gold scales emerged on its surface. Before the tramp could reach the bottom of the shaft, his body seemed to be pushed by someone, and he fell heavily into the filthy sewer, splashing up foul waves. The man frowned, and finally took off the glove, throwing it onto the tramp. The tramp let out a roar of agony, and soon lay prone in the sewer, motionless. The black sewage flowed past, covering his body and concealing everything that had happened there. The manhole cover was replaced, as if nothing had ever occurred. Chapter 131, Sartre Nicholas. In late August in Backland, the air in the latter half of the night had turned cool, even somewhat cold. Kylie, dressed somewhat revealingly, hugged her chest with both hands, shivering slightly from the cold. She didn't want to be out soliciting guests so late, but Mr. Pomp had told her she must go to the streets, must dress beautifully, and must not return home until late at night. She didn't want to, but when she saw Pomp's eyes, she knew he wasn't joking. The old Pomp was the kind of person who was glib and full of bad ideas. The current Pomp spoke little, but every word was hard and powerful, making it impossible for her to refuse. She walked helplessly along the street, hoping to drive away a bit of the cold. Under the crimson moonlight, her black shadow stretched longer and longer. Perhaps around this corner, a late returning noble would take a fancy to her, take her into a luxuriously decorated carriage for a cup of hot water, and then let her have a good sleep. The thought that inexplicably surged in her heart gave her hope. She released her hands clutching her chest and pulled her dress down a bit until more of the view inside could be seen clearly in the night. No matter what, I'm going to be in bed tonight, covered with a thick quilt, and have a good sleep. With this thought, she pressed against the wall and turned the corner with high expectations. In a roadside garden not far away, under the pale red moonlight, stood a dog. By human standards, it was unacceptably ugly. Even the most veteran dog lover would find it hard to feel a shred of sympathy for it. The fur on its body had disappeared, and its naked red skin was covered with yellow spots. Its black pupils were particularly eerie in the moonlight. Large drops of liquid flowed from its tongue, and the smell of blood in the air made Kylie instantly recognize what it was. At the same time Kylie saw it, its hind legs, wrapped in large masses of muscle, kicked off hard. Its entire body flew through the air, lunging straight for Kylie's throat. Kylie wanted to run, but her legs were as soft as noodles, unable even to support her body, and she fell flat on the ground. Just as she thought death was imminent and she would be found as a corpse on the street like her other sisters, a sigh suddenly sounded in her ear. Those who fear death will die. The shadow behind her began to churn as if alive, condensing into the figure of a woman completely shrouded in a black robe. It was No. 3333 Afia. She reached out her right hand and grabbed forcefully. The devil dog's neck happened to meet her hand. Pungent green flames ignited all over the naked, vicious dog, emitting a foul smell of sulfur. The flames spread along the woman's white arm toward her body, intending to burn her to ashes. The woman's arm also ignited with the same flames, though the color was deeper and gloomier. The two types of flames intertwined and quickly spread over the dog's body. Burned by the sulfurous flames, the devil dog opened its bloody mouth, revealing teeth stained with bits of shredded meat, and let out a painful roar. Amidst the painful roars, words in the devil language burst from the dog's mouth, twisting into the image of a devil in the air. It was an exceptionally tall devil. The devil dog and the woman clutching its neck looked like a group of ants before it. A pair of ram horns burning with yellow flames grew on its head. Its eyes emitted a faint green glow, and a long brown beard hung below its jaw. The nails on its hands were like sharp knives, and its entire body was covered in brownish-red hair that looked like blood. From a distance, it looked like a goat walking upright. As the sound of the devil incantation grew louder, the devil's eyes began to move, like a dead deity regaining consciousness. This was the most cruel ability possessed by all devils, devil projection. By killing other living beings, one could briefly summon the projection of a powerful devil from the abyss to fight for them. And what the devil dog summoned was the powerful devil that the Belia family had always sacrificed living people to, Sartre Nicholas. As the last devil word was spat out, the devil dog's neck was completely snapped by the woman's sturdy arm, losing its final breath. Its filthy blood gushed out like a fountain, merging into the figure of the ram-horned devil, making the projection of this powerful devil more real and frenzied. Sartre Nicholas raised his right hand high. 5 ghastly green fireballs burning with intense heat formed on his fingers, emitting a terrifying temperature. Even from far away, one could feel the aura of destruction within them. This strike had already exceeded the limit that a mid-sequence Beander could withstand. Kylie only caught the shadow of the devil out of the corner of her eye, and her mind lost consciousness. She scrambled up like a lunatic and ran into the distance. Just then, from beneath the black robe of number 3333, another arm suddenly reached out. This was a man's left arm, but it was extremely thin and weak, as if it had no blood. The skin, flesh, and tendons on the fingers were tightly pressed against the bone. The fingers of this withered left hand suddenly clenched, and the wrist followed with a half-turn. No 3333's pale face suddenly puffed up, turning the color of liver. The blood vessels on it protruded like tiny poisonous insects. The fireballs in Sartre Nicholas's right hand suddenly vanished. The next second, they appeared in the woman's palm. The woman's hand was completely unable to withstand such high temperatures. The 5 fireballs lined up in her palm and flew toward the shadow under an elm tree in the street garden. The shadow quickly faded. A middle-aged man with high cheekbones, blue eyes tinged with gray, and neatly combed back hair grabbed a huge cage with both hands, blocking the 5 fireballs. Those ghastly green fireballs crashed into the cage, scattering into a floor of green sparks. The middle-aged man put away the cage and bowed to the giant devil. Great Lord Sartre Nicholas, as you expected, there are still followers of Farbati hiding here. It only took one devil dog to draw them out. Farbati's remnants are still so foolish and overconfident. Sartre Nicholas did not relax at all. His massive body began to writhe uneasily, and his brownish-red, blood-like hair fluttered in the wind. An even more evil and filthy aura dissipated from his body. The middle-aged man took only one look and immediately transformed into a devil, running away quickly on all fours. Living beings are born with sin. As the devil's almost roaring voice sounded, tiny, imperceptible black auras appeared from the surrounding flowers, trees, bricks, soil, and the bodies of the sleeping residents along the entire street. These auras quickly combined with the evil and filthy power on the devil's body, forming a massive word in the devil language. Death. The great Sartre Nicholas shall grant the heretics the greatest salvation, eternal death. As Sartre spat out the last word, the devil language in the sky began to deform and twist, closing in on AFIA from all directions like a giant black net without any blind spots. Chapter 132, The Story of the Frog Prince. Backland Queen District, Viscount Glaint's study. You said you have the Sequence 8 potion for the apprentice pathway, is that true? Fur's Wall's pale blue eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe what the young lady before her had said. How did you know the potion I took was apprentice, and that I was looking for the Sequence 8 potion? It's simple deduction. Aren't you a mystery novelist? This should be something quite easy to figure out. Audrey Hall sat quietly on the sofa, her tone gentle yet incredibly firm. Even though I've written many detective novels, I still get cheated even when buying groceries, Fur said, blushing slightly. Actually, the process of how I obtained my potion was quite bizarre, enough to write a novel about. Of course, I'm not sure if it would be a detective story or an inspirational one. Actually, what I wanted to say is, I never even knew exactly what potion I had taken. Furs recalled her experience of becoming a Beander and suddenly realized her luck had been truly good, though, of course, the price paid was also heavy. Well, actually, I'm here to tell you that I've bought the formula for Sequence 8, Trickmaster. I wonder if you're interested. Just as Furs was considering whether to buy the formula, Viscount Glaint, who had been watching from the side, suddenly interjected. Audrey, do you have other formulas? For example, the kind that makes people like me more, or makes me more powerful. £1,000. Do you want the apothecary formula? Audrey's voice carried no particular emotion. That's too expensive. Last time we went to Mr. A's gathering, I saw a Sequence 8 formula for only £450. Glaint's voice was hesitant, as if he couldn't make up his mind. Then you can go by the Arbiter formula, just like Zio. For you, the apothecary formula is worth this price. Audrey's tone was exceptionally firm, leaving no room for bargaining. All right, write it down for me then. Glaint made up his mind quickly, fearing Audrey might change her mind. There's a gathering of Mr. A's tomorrow. Let's go together and try to gather enough materials to become a real Beander, so I can invite Elena to my banquet. After taking the apothecary potion and becoming a Beander, I'll definitely attract her. Glaint looked up at the sky, seemingly falling into some state of contemplation again. I think I have inspiration for my next romance novel. A young noble, in order to pursue a beautiful lady, drinks a potion without hesitation and turns into a frog, only able to croak every day while hopping around a pond. Ah, what a touching story of a frog prince. Furs looked at Audrey with a straight face and asked, Dear Miss Audrey, how much is the Trickmaster formula? My royalties haven't come in yet, and I'm a bit short on cash. No need. As long as you write that story into a novel, publish it in Backland, and ensure sales of over 10,000 copies, I'll give you this potion formula for free. Hearing Audrey's proposal, Furs was about to jump for joy, but then looked at Viscount Glaint with some embarrassment. I was just joking. Glaint waved his hand dismissively and instructed his personal butler to take out £1,000. He handed it to Audrey and received the apothecary formula. Narcissus Street, Tingen City. Having eaten his fill and washed the dishes and himself, Klein returned to his bedroom and locked the wooden door. He drew his ritual silver dagger and sealed the entire room with a wall of spirituality, preparing to go above the gray fog to summon the fool who doesn't belong to this era. Of course, he had to perform a divination first, to go above the gray fog and divine whether summoning the fool who doesn't belong to this era was dangerous. Right pointing arrow. This was a necessary quality for an excellent seer. The grayish-white hazy fog permeated eternally, and crimson illusory stars hung far and near. Klein sat inside the grand palace that looked like a giant's residence, quietly gazing at the familiar surroundings. Summoning himself, what a wonderful experience. Even if the Hanged Man and Justice knew more or had more pounds, they still couldn't experience this kind of fun. After a few seconds, he withdrew his gaze, let a piece of brownish-yellow parchment manifest before him, and then picked up a pen to write down the summoning ritual with his modified incantations. Since he was summoning himself, his writing of the ritual process was simple and dry, without any intention of pleasing a deity. After carefully reviewing it 3 times, Klein wrote the divination statement at the very bottom. Performing the above ritual in the outside world is dangerous. After chanting it silently 7 times, Klein opened his nearly pitch-black eyes and saw the citrine pendant rotating counterclockwise. This meant a negative, it meant there was no danger. I can give it a try. Klein returned to his bedroom, cleared his desk, and stood a mint-scented candle in the very center. He pressed his right hand lightly over the wick, lighting the candle through spiritual friction. To save money, he dripped some perfume his sister had bought for bathing and improving body odor onto the candle. A peaceful and leisurely fragrance instantly filled the air, as the room turned bright and then dim. Taking 2 steps back, Klein gazed at the candle symbolizing himself and recited solemnly in Hermes language. I summon in my name. The fool who doesn't belong to this era, the mysterious ruler above the gray fog, the king of yellow and black who wields good luck. As soon as he finished speaking, the flickering dim yellow candlelight and the surrounding peaceful fragrance merged into a vortex, frantically absorbing his own spirituality. Enduring the discomfort of his spirituality being drained, Klein finished reciting the subsequent incantations. The candle flame stopped flickering and stood there quietly, dyed with a grayish-white hue and stretching outward to the size of a palm. Nothing was summoned. Right, maybe I need to go above the gray fog to provide a response. Summoning oneself is really a hassle. Klein massaged his empty, aching forehead and went above the gray fog once more. He saw circles of light ripples spreading out from the seat at the head of the ancient long table. He merely made a gesture of reaching out to touch it, and immediately the incantations he had just recited echoed in his ears. He saw the surging spirituality mix with the spreading light ripples, transforming into an illusory, unformed door. Klein immediately had a flash of inspiration and projected a strong intent to push it open. The boundless gray fog and the magnificent palace were suddenly pulled, producing nearly invisible ripples. These ripples flowed circle after circle toward that illusory, unformed door. But no matter how Klein pushed, that door could not be opened, and all the movement eventually returned to silence. Because the summoning door isn't fully formed. Klein withdrew his intent, frowning slightly as he began to analyze the reason for the failure. It's because my spirituality is insufficient to construct a complete, summoning door. Once I advance to sequence 8 and become a clown, passing through the initial dangerous stage, I can try again. Maybe there won't be a problem then. Klein nodded slightly, roughly understanding what was going on. Mr. Hanged Man had already provided the formulas for clown and magician, his advancement was an inevitability. One day, I will uncover all the secrets here. In Mr. Hanged Man, Miss Justice, and Mr. Sun, they definitely all have secrets. Klein made an excited declaration in his heart and, wrapped in spirituality, descended into the boundless gray fog. Chapter 133, The Slap Repair Method. Taiwan Novel Network provides a great experience, twcon.com is awesome. The cold night wind blew the fallen yellow leaves of the Intis parasol trees onto the street. Sartre. Nicholas's filthy incantation twisted the will of every living being here, weaving them into a web of death directed at number 3333 Afia. At this moment, Afia felt every piece of flesh and blood throughout her body begin to stir. They frantically gnawed at her nerves, destroying her will and urging her toward the end of death. She did not panic. By displaying her slaughterous desire to lure out the desire apostle hidden in Backland, this was exactly what she wanted and expected. She had considered many possibilities, including using various means to draw out the devil lurking in Backland. But the desire apostle's slaughter ritual came so directly and so close to her. Every devil possesses an extremely strong danger premonition ability, capable of sensing any beander who might pose a fatal threat to them. Every desire apostle is an expert at luring, catalyzing, twisting, hiding, and spreading desires. They can easily conceal their own slaughterous intent, rendering an opponent's danger premonition useless. A confrontation between two beyonders of the demon pathway, especially between high-sequence powerhouses, is like two hunters in a dark forest, both extremely careful to hide themselves and determined not to be the first to be exposed to the enemy. The decisiveness of the opponent's strike was beyond Afia's expectations. At the very moment her flesh, spirit, and sanity were about to complete their betrayal, Afia struggled to extend a third hand, spread her fingers, and with a poof, thrust it into her chest, the left side. Her third hand quickly pulled away, drenched in blood, its fingers tightly clutching a heart filled with slaughter and madness, a heart that was still contracting and expanding. The third hand gripped the heart and threw it in a crimson arc toward the web of death formed by condensed desire. The massive web of desire found a new target and immediately sent out black threads to entwine the crimson heart. In an instant, the heart was crushed, and scarlet blood gushed out. As her blood drained away, Afia's body rapidly lost all signs of life. In the next second, as the heart was completely pulverized, Afia's body turned into fly ash and vanished into the air. In Sartre, Nicholas's right hand, a small insect wrapped in rings appeared. On the insect's body, completely transparent and completely opaque sections alternated, forming 12 rings. The small insect squirmed gently in his right hand as if it were alive, but Sartre, Nicholas did not hesitate for a moment and crushed it directly. Despicable thief. A mysterious devilish word escaped Sartre's hideous mouth, and his entire figure began to fade, as if he were about to vanish from this world. At the very moment he crushed the insect, a thundercloud the size of a house condensed instantly above his head, and silver-white lightning fell frantically, striking the devil's massive body. Thunder and lightning chased the devil's aura, just as Sartre, Nicholas's figure was about to vanish from Backland and enter the filthy abyss. Those lightning bolts fell as if drawn by a magnet. The devil's flesh, covered in brownish-red fur, was hacked by the chasing thunder, revealing charred flesh and bone that sizzled and burned under the furious lightning. Sartre. Nicholas opened his mouth and let out a howl of pain, his body accelerating its disappearance from Backland. The silver thunder quickly dissipated, revealing the crimson crescent moon. The entire street was quiet, as if no one had ever been there. A long time later, the shadow of a small blade of grass in the roadside garden began to writhe, and a black figure slowly took shape. Wrapped in a black robe, Afia looked around, lifted the cover of a nearby sewer, and jumped in. The underground area of the Church of Steam. The church's high-ranking deacon, Amons, finished reading a thin page of records, picked up his coffee, and took a sip. After a few seconds of calm, he took out the ancient silver mirror called a Rhodes. Carlson, standing nearby, glanced over and asked with some curiosity. "Deacon, if I were to ask the esteemed Rhodes some classic paradoxes, would it give the correct answer?" "Carlson, you must understand that so-called paradoxes are just ridiculous viewpoints summarized by fools for problems they cannot comprehend," Amons sighed. "Rhodes's wisdom far exceeds that of ordinary people, and as for the knowledge corresponding to certain paradoxes, you can neither pay a sufficient price nor bear the consequences that such knowledge brings. As a believer in the God of steam and machinery, to actually believe in concepts created by these fools makes me wonder if there is a problem with your faith." Seeing Carlson's face turn bright red, Amons tapped his chest 3 times and said solemnly, "Remember, any principle that cannot be proven through practice is a false concept. The great son of steam, Emperor Russell, once said, 'Practice is the sole criterion for testing truth,'" Amons said to Carlson earnestly. "This is the best explanation of the doctrine. I hope you remember it well. Now, you will be the one to ask Lord Rhodes to uncover the truth of this incident." Carlson looked at the surrounding team members and noticed they all seemed to have moved a step away from him. "Then I'll ask. I have nothing to hide." He straightened his back, adopting a frank and honest posture. After speaking, he first clenched his fist, then spread his fingers and gently stroked the surface of the silver mirror 3 times. Amidst a subtle mist, Carlson spoke in a low voice. "Esteemed Lord Rhodes, my question is, what happened there last night?" At this point, Carlson seemed worried that Rhodes might not understand him, so he added, "We sensed an extremely powerful aura that even alerted the Archbishop, but we found nothing and aren't even sure where the source was. We need your guidance." The silver mirror showed no change for a long time. After a while, it flashed briefly and then went dark again. "What's going on? It couldn't be broken, could it?" As a believer in the God of steam and machinery, Carlson was naturally extremely skilled at repairs. He immediately used his favorite slap repair method and slapped the eye-like decoration on the silver mirror. "Don't." Amons, who had been watching with his messy hair, suddenly reacted and tried to stop Carlson. But Carlson's movements were too practiced and natural, and he agilely dodged Amons, who was stronger than him. The moment his right hand landed on the silver mirror, a thick bolt of lightning fell instantly. It was exceptionally dazzling white, enough to make one feel the owner's rage. Carlson didn't have time to make any dodging maneuvers before being struck by the lightning. He fell to the ground without a word, his hair becoming even messier than that of high-ranking Deacon Amons. "He's still alive." A mystery prior standing nearby, dressed in a classic black robe, stepped forward to check Carlson's breath and, after a long pause, spoke somewhat gloomily. The lightning damaged his body and destroyed his nerves. For a while, his intelligence might not remain at a normal level. Chapter 134, Key of Fate Tracing. What on earth is going on? High-ranking Deacon Amons looked at the mystery prior, hoping to get an answer from him. "I can't interpret anything either." The aging mystery prior, whose hair was already turning gray, hesitated for a moment before speaking in a tired voice. "Perhaps, as you initially suggested, sir, Carlson's problem exceeded the limits of Lord Rhodes's power, making it unable to provide a result. It might have even taken its frustration out on Carlson, causing his injury." That seems to make some sense. Even if the magic mirror Rhodes were to issue a punishment, it would usually ask a question first. It would never start with a punishment right away. Let's leave it at that for now. I will seal all the documents and wait for the Archbishop to handle it. Amons tucked away the thin sheet of paper and looked at Carlson, who was still lying on the ground, asking with a hint of concern. How long will it take for him to return to normal? No one knows. Everything is the will of the God. The gray-haired mystery prior tapped an inverted triangle on his chest, his voice tinged with regret. Then find a believer to read the Machine Bible to him every day. He didn't like reading before, but now that he has a problem with his head, he should be able to study properly. To the far east of the Sunia Sea lies the strangest terrain and most unpredictable weather in the entire northern continent. Even powerful beyonders and ferocious pirates dare not set foot here lightly. In the deepest part of this ocean, on a black island shrouded in storms and thunder, an ancient palace stands quietly in the deep darkness. The churning lightning and surging seawater do not cause it the slightest harm. Embedded in the palace's mottled and weathered walls is a giant wall clock carved from stone. A young man wearing a classical black robe and a matching pointed soft hat sat upright in a high-backed chair in the center of the hall. He had curly black hair, black eyes, a broad forehead, thin cheeks, and a crystal monocle on his face. Behind him, two slightly dim worms of time, each with 12 translucent segments, were slowly rotating around his body. These two worms of time followed each other head to tail, forming identical vertical rings. The rings rotated slowly, projecting a giant, ancient, mottled phantom behind the young man. This phantom looked like the face of a stone-carved wall clock, divided into 12 segments. Each segment was either grayish-white or bluish-black, alternating with clear boundaries. They possessed different symbols and emitted various eerie and evil auras. If a mortal were to catch even a glimpse of it, their life would rapidly fade away, turning to ash as they left this world. Dong! The sound of a bell, seemingly echoing through history, rang out and drifted far into the empty, hidden world. The young man sitting in the high-backed chair suddenly bent over as if he had suffered a severe trauma. He began to cough violently, and mouthfuls of blood poured from his lips, staining his chest a deep red. Even the stone-carved wall clock behind him stopped rotating and began to fade, threatening to vanish into the air. Was number 3333 discovered? Even the worm of time was crushed. As number 4 muttered to himself, his index finger moved with difficulty to adjust the monocle on his right eye. An indescribable invisible torrent emerged, swirling with streaks of gray mist, and rushed toward the giant, illusory stone-carved wall clock. Dong! Another bell rang. On the clock face where grayish-white and bluish-black intersected, a mottled hand appeared. This hand jumped down several segments, causing the echoing bell to ring more urgently. Number 4's young body began to age as his invisible life force was drawn out and entered the giant, illusory stone-carved wall clock behind him. The fading illusory stone-carved wall clock became clear again. The bloodstains on the young man's chest disappeared without a trace, and he sat upright in the high-backed chair once more, his expression solemn, as if nothing had happened. For such a powerful avatar to disappear just like that, it's impossible. A brass-colored key appeared in the young man's right hand. Both sides of the key were carved with uneven patterns, and the rust spots on it showed that it had not been used for a long time. Key of fate tracing, tell me what just happened. The brass key was tossed up by the young man, emitting a piercing sound as if it were colliding violently with something invisible. It tumbled and rubbed rapidly in the air, the rust on it beginning to disappear, revealing its original form. It was a key a full 30 centimeters long, with sharp teeth that made it look like a pointed dagger. The key was thrust heavily into the stone-carved wall clock behind the young man, and the ancient hands on the clock began to rotate counterclockwise. First the red second hand, then the black minute hand, and finally the bluish-gray hour hand. The three hands of varying lengths began to retreat slowly, like an invisible arm turning the clock in reverse. The hands retreated faster and faster, and the stone-carved wall clock became fainter and fainter. Figures jumped out from the gaps in history, passed through the stone-carved wall clock, and flew into the distance, vanishing from sight. With a wave of his hand, number 4 dropped a bead of blood onto the key of fate tracing. The brass key, like a sharp dagger, suddenly plunged downward, completely piercing the wall clock. The constantly retreating hands were suddenly halted as if pressed down by a hand, emitting a piercing sound of metal grinding. At that moment, number 4 saw those illusory figures suddenly distort and begin to become real, like living, breathing people. They began to slaughter each other, splashing bits of real blood. Even number 4's clothes were inevitably stained with a few drops. The monocle-wearing number 4 suddenly reached out his right hand, intending to pull out the key of fate tracing. Sensing number 4's action, the figures stopped all activity. Countless tentacles grew from their bodies, pulling and attracting each other, quickly turning into a giant ball of flesh. The flesh ball was composed of masses of exposed muscles and blood vessels, without a trace of skin. Black and red blood dripped from it, making a sizzling sound as it hit the temple floor. If one had not reached the demigod sequence, merely glancing at the flesh ball would result in being polluted by the curses and filth within, losing one's sanity and becoming part of the flesh ball. The floor was corroded into grayish-white hollows, like molten iron dripping onto wood. Number 4 reached out, and the distance between him and the key vanished. His right hand appeared on the key of fate tracing, and in the next second, he could pull the key out. The flesh ball seemed to sense a great threat. Spiny tentacles extended from its surface and lashed out at Number 4's right hand, trying to snatch the miraculous key from his grasp. The movement of these tentacles was agile and ferocious. Just as Number 4 had pulled the key out by 10 centimeters, the tentacles had already wrapped around the wrist holding the key, trying to pull him into the flesh ball. Chapter 135, High Cooperation Value. On the second floor of the Blackthorn Security Company in Tingen City, behind the Charnus Gate, inside Captain Dunsmith's office. After handing over the telepathous potion formula, Klein finally accumulated enough merit for the promotion to clown. Thanks to the Hanged Man, he was one step closer to becoming the real Mr. Fool. As a genius who had completely digested the potion in just over a month, the Church of the Goddess of Night gave Klein sufficient attention. A high-ranking deacon set out from St. Samuel's Church in Backland to Tingen to examine and guide Klein's promotion. Dunsmith adjusted his shirt collar and said in a deep voice, "The person in charge of this assessment is Crestet Sisma, one of the 9 high-ranking deacons of the Nighthawks. The Holy Cathedral values you highly." A high-ranking deacon. Klein repeated the captain's words, as if not understanding what it implied. "Yes, a high-ranking deacon. But don't be nervous. Crestet is only a sequence 5 and hasn't stepped into the demigod level yet. There's no need to be too afraid or intimidated. Well, his title in the entire Beander world is Blade of the Goddess. I just spoke with him, and his attitude is very kind. As long as you piously believe in the Evernight Goddess, there's no need to feel nervous at all." Captain Dunn gave instructions calmly. In his view, it was inevitable that Klein would pass this assessment and promote to Sequence 8. "I'm just pretending to be Mr. Fool. I don't actually believe in Mr. Fool. So my faith in the Evernight Goddess is still pious." Klein comforted himself with the excuses he had already prepared, and naturally tapped his chest 4 times, appearing thoughtful. "Where should I go to meet this high-ranking deacon?" "The alchemy room for concocting potions," Dunn replied simply and directly, a flash of gloom immediately crossing his face. Klein exhaled slowly, took his thin black trench coat from the coat rack, put his hands in his pockets, and walked down the winding stairs deep underground step by step. He turned left at the intersection and saw a man in his 30s wearing a black trench coat and a white shirt in the alchemy room. His golden brown hair was cut very short, and his dark green eyes were like a moonless lake at midnight. The collars of his shirt and trench coat were turned up high, hiding his entire chin in the shadows. "Hello, Your Excellency Sisma." Klein bowed and greeted him. Crestet Sisma sat with his right leg crossed over his left, leaning back leisurely against the chair's back, and smiled slightly. "Hello, Klein. You can sit there." He pointed to the high-backed chair opposite him. "I plan to test your mastery of the potion first. Is that okay?" "No problem." Klein shook his head with confidence. The 3-minute test was effortless for him, having been long tested by the gray fog. He even took the opportunity to relax a little. Crestet Sisma clasped his hands over his knees and slumped down slightly, his lips obscured by the high-standing collar. "You passed the test. Your mastery of the potion has reached an excellent level. Next, I need to observe whether there are hidden dangers in your body, mind, and soul, and whether your personality has been unconsciously changed by the residual spirituality of the potion, leaving behind problems." Before he could speak, Crestet began to hum a melodious tune. The melody echoed in the alchemy room, gradually losing its harmony and no longer following the tune. Squeak, screech, scratch. Klein felt as if he heard the sound of fingernails scratching a blackboard, the sound of styrofoam rubbing together, the rattling sound of an electric drill, and all sorts of noises that drove him crazy. These noises became more numerous and chaotic, causing a violent desire to vent and destroy to spontaneously arise in his heart. However, Klein, who frequently underwent the trials of mad ravings and terrifying screams, quickly suppressed all these impulses. He also appropriately displayed a bit of irritability, a bit of tension, a bit of agitation, and a bit of unease, making his state look less than perfect. A few minutes later, Crestet Sisma stopped singing. The noise in the alchemy room disappeared, and the peace and silence of the underground flooded back in. Good, very good. There are no hidden dangers in your body, mind, or soul. Crestet's voice betrayed no emotion. Congratulations, you've passed all the tests. Next is the Q&A session. His dark green eyes suddenly became deeper, his gaze so profound it seemed to see through the flesh and into the soul. You said your experience at the divination club allowed you to quickly master the potion. Yes. Klein first affirmed, then changed the subject and began to explain in detail the various reasons why he discovered the acting method. Of course, these were the excuses he had already thought of before handing over the telepathous potion formula. In his past life, he would have definitely been nervous and blushed saying so many half-truths in front of such a powerful Nighthawk. But since transmigrating to this world, as Mr. Fool, he had already accumulated enough experience and performed flawlessly. Dunn confirmed your experience. I think you are indeed a genius with clear logic and sharp intuition, Crestet praised, the corners of his mouth curling up. Well, I plan to share some experience with you, but according to the Holy Cathedral's regulations, you must swear to the goddess not to tell the contents of our conversation to anyone who doesn't know these things. Is that okay? Passed the assessment. Klein was delighted and nodded without hesitation. No problem. Although I won't be able to directly teach others the acting method, because of this, I can still do it indirectly through Miss Justice and Mr. Hanged Man. Ah, it seems they don't need teaching anymore. Good. Crestet Sisma nodded, leaning forward slightly. Then swear upon the sacred artifact. Klein's heart began to beat wildly. For so long, what he worried about most was that mysterious, perhaps non-existent Evernight goddess. Would his secrets be detected by the Evernight goddess after touching the sacred artifact? But at this point, he could not turn back. The strength of high-ranking Deacon Crestet Sisma was the most powerful he had seen so far. He had no confidence in fighting or escaping. Klein hesitated for a moment, then reached out his right hand and pressed his palm onto the sacred artifact. What if the Evernight goddess can't find my secret? What if that gray fog is related to the Evernight goddess? What if the goddess discovers the gray fog and thinks I have high cooperation value, and from then on, I reach the peak of my life? After reciting the oath to the Evernight goddess in Hermes language, Crestet Sisma nodded with satisfaction and began to explain the Church of the Night's understanding of the acting method to Klein in detail. Klein found that the high-ranking deacon's understanding of the acting method didn't seem as profound as what he had gained from Russell's diary. Chapter 136. Who is helping me act as a clown? Looking at the beautiful golden red-yellow liquid in his palm, Klein skillfully unfastened the silver chain inside his left cuff. He was going to perform a divination. As a qualified seer, divining everything that can be divined is a good habit. The amplitude is very small, indicating a low degree of harm. Well, potions will cause loss of control, so there are definitely downsides, but a low degree proves there is no problem with the potion. Klein breathed a sigh of relief, wrapped the pendulum back around his left wrist, and picked up the clown potion again. By drinking it, I can become a sequence 8 Beander. With a flash of thought, Klein no longer hesitated. He raised the cup, tilted his head slightly, and gulped down the potion. Bitter. So bitter. It doesn't taste good at all. He instantly understood what it meant for something to look good but taste terrible. He felt his entire face wrinkle up, wanting to vomit but unable to. Immediately after, Klein noticed his face flushing red, with similar changes occurring in other parts of his body. He was very certain he looked like a steamed shrimp right now, while his spirit detached itself, turning into fine needles that merged into every drop of potion and pierced into every cell. It was a sensation of being able to observe cells without a microscope. Klein stood there, watching the invaders enter the most minute domains of his body. In these few seconds, he felt like a robot undergoing a transformation of parts and circuits. After an unknown amount of time, his own figure was reflected in his mind, much like hearing the sound of his own singing through an earpiece. With the help of this eerie reflection, Klein discovered he could precisely master his facial expressions and body movements. At the same time, his ears buzzed, hearing the ravings and shouts that had not appeared for a long time echoing around him once more. Hornecus. Flegre. Hornecus. Flegre. Hornecus. Flegre. Phew. Klein visualized layers of light spheres, slowly entering a state of meditation, bit by bit shaking off the slight overflow of spirituality and the minor lack of control. At this moment, he clearly knew his advancement was successful. He knew he was a sequence 8 inches clown. Just then, he suddenly felt the potion that had entered his body, those spirit needles that had pierced his cells, begin to rapidly merge into his cells. The discomfort and pain in his body from just taking the potion vanished instantly. Klein, no longer a novice in the Beander world, immediately understood what was happening. His clown potion had begun to digest. But, I just took the potion, I haven't even started acting yet. I haven't acted, yet you're starting to digest. What does this mean? Klein couldn't react for a moment. This was completely beyond his expectations. Crestet, the sword of the goddess, hadn't mentioned this situation, Russell's diary hadn't mentioned it, and the hanged man hadn't mentioned it either. Seeming to notice his abnormality, Crestet Sisma involuntarily placed his right hand on his holy sword to prevent any sudden loss of control from Klein. I haven't lost control, it's just that the potion I just took has suddenly begun to digest. Looking at Crestet's right hand, Klein explained with a slight bit of nervousness. Your potion started digesting just now. Crestet's right hand did not move from the holy sword as he ordered in an extremely serious voice. Revelation of the Night, Chapter 1, Hermes' Language, 3 times. All right. Klein gave a bitter smile and began to pray. They are naked, without clothing or food, with no covering in the cold. They are drenched by the heavy rain, and because there is no shelter, they cling to the rocks. They are the mothers whose children have been snatched away, they are the orphans who have lost hope, they are the poor who have been forced from the righteous path. The night has not abandoned them, but has granted them its favor. The holy and merciful prayer echoed underground, bringing a liberating tranquility to everyone's body, mind, and soul. Seeing that Klein had no abnormal reaction, Crestet's right hand finally moved away from the holy sword. He packed the box away again, his voice becoming relaxed. Prudence is very necessary when facing any Beander phenomenon. Now, describe the specific situation of your potion mastery. Klein closed his eyes and began to sense the digestion of the potion throughout his body through the reflection of himself in his mind. After a long while, he suddenly opened his eyes, which revealed an expression of disbelief. Half of my clown potion has already been digested. The potion I just took is already half digested. This time, even the high-ranking Deacon Crestet was equally surprised. There was no lack of geniuses in the Church of the Night, but to digest half of a potion immediately after taking it was simply too exaggerated. You have done well. I will report this truthfully to the Holy Cathedral. Pay attention to summarizing the methods and core of the potion's acting, and master the clown potion as quickly as possible. The methods and core of the potion's acting, clown potion. A spark suddenly flashed in Klein's mind, and he instantly understood the key to it. Respected Your Excellency Sisma, if one performs actions that fit the requirements of the potion's acting before taking the potion, can that accelerate the progress of the potion's digestion? High-ranking Deacon Crestet frowned deeply and began to recall information on this subject. It should be possible, but most of the time, we do not know the name of the potion corresponding to the next sequence, so it is difficult to perform acting and digestion in advance. The Holy Cathedral has no records of this, it is merely a guess of mine. Then what is the core of acting as a clown? Klein seemed to be talking to himself, yet also asking Crestet, his voice carrying a deep sense of helplessness and pain. I am not clear on that. The acting rules for every potion are different and require one to summarize them for themselves. I imagine the clown is the same. Crestet spoke while thinking, and suddenly understood what Klein meant. Have you been acting as a clown this whole time? He turned to look at Klein, his words full of doubt. How would I know how a clown should act? Klein wanted to speak, but his open mouth seemed frozen by his own thoughts, unable to say another word. Who is helping me act as a clown? Who turned me into a clown? Who caused half of my clown potion to be digested? How did I not know that I have been acting as a clown all along? Klein felt like he was suffocating, no one could easily accept such a fact. This was a blatant insult to his intelligence. Don't let me find out who you are, I definitely won't thank you. Klein clenched his hands, wanting to roar loudly or swear an oath to the gods like a Chunabu teenager before his transmigration. But in the end, he silently endured it. High-ranking Deacon Crestet's hand rested on his shoulder as he offered comfort with a hint of sympathy. You are the most talented Beander I have ever seen. I hope you can maintain this state as much as possible. Although I do not know what method you used to act as a clown, it is undoubtedly very effective and worth sticking to. Chapter 137. Let me see, just who is it? In the forsaken land of the gods, amidst the boundless, endless darkness, the flickering lights kindled by the city of silver brought a glimmer of hope to this dim world. Inside one of the extremely low and crude rooms, Derek Berg was sitting on his bed, looking at a pile of items placed on the table before him. One singing sunflower, one midsummer herb, 5 drops of July wine juice, 1 piece of dark leaf of the elves. The materials for the barred potion formula were relatively easy to gather within the city of silver. After the boy sold off all the inheritance left by his parents, he barely managed to gather the materials listed on the potion formula. Following the hanged man's instructions, he quickly mixed all the materials together, turning them into a mass of white liquid. I hope Mr. Hanged Man hasn't deceived me. The boy picked up the liquid and drank it all in one go. The taste was slightly spicy. He immediately felt a warm sensation throughout his entire body. A stream of heat flowed from the potion into his stomach, into all his bodily organs, and into his mind. He could even sense a tiny, extremely faint sun appearing in his mind, illuminating the boundless darkness within. Is this what it means to be a Beander? He raised his hands, wanting to pray to the creator of the city of silver, but as soon as he lifted them, he remembered the source of the potion. I should praise Mr. Fool, but Mr. Fool never told me how I should praise him. The boy raised his hands once more. After a long pause, he suddenly spoke, his voice tinged with excitement. Praise the sun. What's going on? I clearly wanted to praise Mr. Fool, so why did it become, praise the sun? Derek looked towards a polished stone in the corner of the table, which reflected his blurry shadow, allowing him to roughly see his mouth movements. He focused on his somewhat childish face and slowly made a sound once again. Praise the fool. This time, he heard his own voice, exactly as he had imagined it. I'll ask Mr. Hanged Man during the next Tarot Club meeting. This is just too strange. Praise the fool. Praise the fool. Praise the fool. Praise the sun. Praise the fool. ... Derek practiced several more times before finally putting away the materials, satisfied, feeling a recurring itch in his throat. Water in the city of silver was an extremely precious resource, requiring great effort to be transported from far away, and it had to be purified by demon hunters before it could be used. Currently, Derek had no water reserves left. He could only cough forcefully to somewhat alleviate the symptom. Just then, he heard singing coming from outside the window. It was the city of silver's hunting party returning. They were humming the Giant King's Battle Song, passed down from the Silver Kingdom, said to have been composed by the ancient Giant King after he defeated the progenitor Phoenix, Gregory. A strange feeling suddenly surged in Derek's mind. If he were to sing it, it would definitely sound better than their rendition. But why would a potion from the sun pathway have anything to do with singing? No. 2 Narcissus Street, Tingen City, inside a second-floor bedroom. Klein was pacing back and forth in the room, seemingly grappling with a difficult problem. Just who is helping me digest the potion? This question clung to Klein like a demon. Ever since he took the clown potion yesterday, up until finishing lunch this morning, he had been pondering this issue. At first, he suspected Melissa and Ben. He thought the meticulous, studious Melissa might have discovered the fact that he was a transmigrator, but for some reason, she hadn't exposed him, merely watching silently as he, like a clown, played the role of her brother. Or perhaps the shrewd Ben had noticed certain differences between him and the original Klein through some small details. To this end, Klein even prepared a lavish dinner, carefully observing their every move at the table. In the end, he realized he was overthinking it. Aside from mildly complaining that Klein had been too wasteful with the cooking, they showed no abnormalities and even ate a bit too much. The clown potion within his body hadn't changed one bit. Next, the focus of his suspicion shifted to the Nighthawks team. Could it be that the captain had seen through his lies all along but hadn't exposed him? From the very beginning, being unfamiliar with this world and inadequately prepared, many of his words and actions couldn't withstand scrutiny. The captain might also have infiltrated his dreams and discovered inconsistencies with reality. However, when he looked into the captain's gray eyes, he completely dismissed this possibility. And then there was that Leonard, who definitely had secrets of his own. This world has a long history, with all sorts of mystical items. There will always be people who obtain them, master them, and become the protagonists of different dramas. Such people won't be numerous, but they certainly can't be limited to just one or two. Didn't this statement imply that he had discovered my secret and had been subtly using me all along, turning me into a clown? After pondering for a long while, Klein felt that although Leonard seemed mysterious, the likelihood wasn't high. He always felt that with Leonard's intelligence, he couldn't pull off something like this. As for the possibility of the potion itself being problematic, he had already ruled that out through divination methods. The greatest possibility still lies within the Tarot Club. After eliminating all possible suspects one by one, whatever remained, no matter how improbable, had to be the truth. So just who is helping me play the clown? For some reason, his first target locked onto the Hanged Man. The powerful, mysteriously originated Hanged Man simply fit the profile of a suspect too well. However, suspicion aside, Klein still tried his best to convince himself not to believe this conclusion. After all, he had just received from him the formulas for 66 potions across 22 sequences. Even though he had saved his life, the value of all those formulas combined had to be at least £40,000, plus the £1,000 he had deposited into his anonymous account. If he thought Mr. Fool was fake, why would he give so much? Then could it be Miss Justice? That was also possible. After all, he had never met a real aristocrat. Perhaps during one of his statements, the other party had seen through his desire for money, thereby damaging Mr. Fool's image. That was plausible. Miss Justice was a spectator. Although just a young girl, the spectator pathway was particularly adept at observing others' inner thoughts. It's all the Hanged Man's fault for selling that spectator potion formula to Miss Justice in the first place. How much better it would have been if she had become a female assassin. It's putting a lot of pressure on me now. And then there's Mr. Sun. Although he seemed very inexperienced, lacking any life experience, maybe it was all an act. If he himself could have a sudden inspiration and pretend to be Mr. Fool, it was possible for the other party to pretend to be Mr. Sun. The forsaken land of the gods and the city of silver were so mysterious, anything could happen there. He absolutely must not let his guard down. Thinking of this, he took out his pocket watch, opened the cover, and glanced at the time. 2:30 in the afternoon. Come on, let me see, just who is it? Chapter 138, somewhat unremarkable. Klein skillfully walked 4 steps counterclockwise and entered above the gray fog. This place remained as gray, boundless, desolate, and silent as ever, devoid of any living beings besides himself. Klein sat down at the head of the bronze long table and reached his hand towards the crimson star representing the sun. Only the spiritual body and astral body enter the gray fog. The etheric body and physical body itself remain in the outside world, highly vulnerable to harm. According to the agreement, he had to notify the sun in advance, allowing him to prepare and prevent participating in the Tarot Club without any protective measures. Of course, Klein was more worried that the powerful individuals of the City of Silver might trace back to him through the sun. This was also the reason he repeatedly emphasized to the sun the absolute necessity of secrecy. As Klein's hand touched the star representing the sun, an image surfaced in his mind. Derek was kneeling on the ground, praying devoutly to him. He was still in that small room, with no one else around. A dim oil lamp hung on a nearby wall. Klein carefully controlled his perspective, making it broader. The house was built from rough, hard stones, lacking even windows. No other suspicious creatures were found around the youth's dwelling. As Klein's thoughts shifted, Derek, who had been enduring hunger and listening to the rumbling of his stomach, appeared on the bronze long table. "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool." With Miss Justice's clear voice ringing out in the Tarot Club, a new session officially began. Klein found that after his promotion to clown, his control over the gray fog had deepened, allowing him to observe each member better. He focused his spirit, observing carefully. Vaguely, he saw that deep within the sun's etheric body was a dazzling golden yellow, giving a feeling of warmth and justice. However, this golden yellow was obscured by various chaotic lights, making it appear somewhat impure. The sun has already been promoted to a bard and is a true Beander now, somewhat resembling Miss Justice when she first advanced. He shifted his gaze to Justice. Unlike right after she consumed the spectator potion, now deep within Miss Justice's etheric body, a faintly discernible dragon seemed to be swimming. As if sensing Klein's gaze, the gray dragon showed a tendency to open its eyes. Justice has also been promoted. Previously, she purchased the Sequence 8 formula, now she should be a telepathist. He then turned his gaze to the Hanged Man. He had always been secretly observing the Hanged Man, but could only see gray-black mist tightly entwined around his etheric body. This time, he saw that the gray-black mist seemed to have grown denser, a darkness that seemed capable of absorbing even light. This mist formed a massive vortex, slowly rotating around Mr. Hanged Man, as if capable of sucking in everything in the world. The Hanged Man has also been promoted. However, it seems his condition isn't too good, his spirituality appears damaged. Under normal circumstances, everyone's astral body flows normally and naturally, not deliberately restrained like this. In mysticism, this generally indicates damaged spirituality, requiring slow recovery through external circulation. This recovery method is relatively fast but consumes more physical strength. Moreover, due to the external manifestation of Beander characteristics, it easily triggers the Beander characteristic aggregation law, attracting even more powerful enemies. Right pointing arrow. The Hanged Man encountered an enemy, engaged in a fierce battle, and seems to have been injured. Klein quickly made a judgment. It hasn't been long since the Hanged Man last requested his help to escape from that mysterious place. Compared to this, his own work as a Nighthawk seems incredibly safe. However, if things continue like this, as the master of the Grey Fog and the observer of everything, Mr. Fool, if others promote too quickly, it will only be a matter of time before he is seen through. Originally, he had hoped that his own promotion would grant him better control over the Grey Fog, allowing him to observe each member and discover the key to digesting his clown potion. Now it seems, everyone has been promoted, making him appear somewhat unremarkable. Thinking of this, he tapped the table and said in an extremely flat tone, "Let's begin." Miss Justice took out 3 pages of Russell's diary, which recorded the attitude of high-ranking church members towards the acting method. In summary, strict secrecy, letting as few people as possible know about the acting method. Klein remembered how the church's high-ranking deacon, Sisma, had required him to maintain secrecy through an oath. Everyone who knew about the acting method was called behind the Charnus gate to swear one by one. These waters are deeper than I imagined. Li Meng, who had been waiting for him to read the diary, watched as the pages in Klein's hand disappeared before slowly speaking. "I have a matter that requires entrustment." Justice, son, and even Klein immediately perked up, pricking up their ears. Justice was so because it was the first time she had seen Mr. Hanged Man propose an entrustment, while the son hoped to obtain more knowledge by completing the commission. "I encountered an ambush in Backland. The ambusher used Beander abilities from at least the storm, sun, and darkness pathways. His strength was formidable, preliminarily estimated to have reached Sequence 5. Li Meng's voice was calm and quiet, as if the events he described hadn't happened to him. The Hanged Man survived an ambush by a Sequence 5 Beander and only suffered injuries. Involuntarily, Klein compared the Hanged Man with high-ranking Deacon Sisma in his heart, finding they were not on the same level. This deacon possesses a true sacred artifact and can directly borrow divine power when necessary. He is clearly not in the same league as someone like the Hanged Man, who even treats himself as a deity. If he had drawn high-ranking Deacon Sisma into the Tarot Club instead of the current Hanged Man back then, he would probably have long since departed for the deep and dark heaven. There would have been no chance to play the role of Mr. Fool. A pot finds its lid. Only someone like the Hanged Man, who seems formidable yet lacks true strength, would mistake himself for a revived ancient existence. Along with the inexperienced, Justice, and the desperate, son, grabbing at any straw. Thinking of this, Klein considered himself lucky to have coincidentally met 2 suitable individuals on his first summoning of the Tarot Club. That ambusher was extremely powerful. Just a few attacks caused irreversible damage to my body. I only escaped his pursuit by relying on a special method. I hope someone can help me report information about him to the church, or hire an even more powerful Beander to eliminate him. While slowly operating the Life Siphon Spell, Li Meng began recounting the course of events. Chapter 139, The Ironclad Tarot Club, The Ever-Changing Hanged Man. Life Siphon Spell, was a powerful and eerie spell recorded in Scholar's Book No. 9998. It had only one effect: to burn the caster's flesh and blood, transforming it into their own spirituality. Simple, crude, and effective, it was completely different in style from the other spells recorded in the Scholar's Book. Of course, the price to pay after using this spell was extremely severe. First, once activated, it was difficult to stop. It would continuously burn the user's flesh and blood until their body completely collapsed and perished. Second, it was a spell with immense depletion. Typically, after spiritual exhaustion, resting for a few days would restore one to normal. However, the flesh and blood lost after using Life Siphon Spell might not recover even after a month. Finally, as an evil forbidden art, the spirituality it generated leaned more towards darkness, corruption, and distortion. After using it, one would involuntarily tread the path of corruption. After advancing to Shadow Ascetic, Li Meng discovered this spell in Scholar's Book number 9998, never expecting he would have to use it so soon. For a normal person, using this forbidden art was no different from seeking death. Only the secret supplicants possessed unique conditions that allowed them to preserve their lives under such secret arts. The spirituality of the faceless pathway itself was already filled with darkness, corruption, and distortion, perfectly aligning with the spirituality generated by Life Siphon Spell. There was no issue of one polluting the other. Moreover, secret supplicants themselves had greatly enhanced physical bodies, enabling them to burn more enduringly and thoroughly. Based on my speculation, the assailant might be the great pirate Kilangos, Vice Admiral Hurricane, one of the 7 pirate generals. Actually, after seeing Vice Admiral Hurricane, I remembered this person and his storyline. Li Meng adjusted his tone to make it sound more compelling. I heard that in Loan alone, his bounty is as high as 10,000 pounds. Unfortunately, I couldn't kill him. This is an image left behind from my encounter with him. With the permission of Mr. Fool, Li Meng materialized a portrait of Kilangos. This was a man with a distinctively broad chin. His brown hair was tied into an ancient warrior's topknot at the back of his head. His dark green eyes seemed to hold a smile, yet were exceptionally cold. Most striking was the black glove on his right hand, which looked like a writhing black serpent tightly coiled around his fingers and arm. If I were to capture this Vice Admiral Hurricane, could I immediately claim the 10,000 pounds? Klein pretended to glance casually a few times, firmly memorizing his appearance. Is Mr. Hanged Man in Backland? Upon hearing Li Meng's account, Audrey was somewhat surprised. She hadn't expected the mysterious Hanged Man to be so close to her. Then, was Vice Admiral Hurricane also nearby? She had just advanced to Sequence 8. If she encountered him, it would certainly be very dangerous. But a mere pirate Vice Admiral with only a 10,000 pounds bounty, wasn't that too little? Her annual allowance alone was more than that. With such low income as a pirate, why not come to Backland and become a great noble? I hope someone reports this news to the church or official organizations. Of course, I won't offer payment for this. After all, information on Vice Admiral Hurricane is valuable in itself. A pirate general with a bounty as high as 10,000 pounds appearing in Backland must have ulterior motives. I hope to draw the attention of the authorities. As he spoke, Li Meng looked towards Mr. Fool seated at the head of the bronze long table. Please don't ask for my help. I can't defeat anyone. The attendant was all made up. Klein prayed frantically in his heart. He possesses a sealed artifact from the Faceless Pathway. Due to certain special reasons, the likelihood of me encountering him again is high. Honorable Mr. Fool, may I request your assistance? What to do? I just fabricated an attendant at the last gathering, and now it's being used. Various thoughts raced through Klein's mind. Pretend not to hear. How could the great Mr. Fool be deaf? My attendant is not in Backland. That sounds good, but it feels a bit like covering one's ears to steal a bell. A trivial matter not worth acting upon. But in Hanged Man's current state, what if he really encounters Kilangos? I'm indeed too kind-hearted. If Hanged Man gets captured or killed by Kilangos, I could simply replace him. The Ironclad Tarot Club, the ever-changing Hanged Man. Iron, water, Klein suddenly had a flash of inspiration, recalling the scene from his divination of the eternal blazing sun not long ago. In that gray, fragmented world, a golden, dazzling sun suddenly leapt out. A low hum echoed across countless voids. Pure, bright light instantly ignited everything, and golden, scorching flames swept outward madly. That light, even through the gray fog, nearly reduced him to ashes. And based on that divination, the talismans created, though not personally tested, should be able to handle a sequence 5, right? But not to mention the expensive production costs and the danger of praying to the eternal blazing sun in an Evernight goddess temple, he had only successfully made 2 so far. They had to be made with the divine blood of the eternal blazing sun, truly a case of using one, losing one. Thinking of this, he gently tapped the table and spoke in a tone that seemed light but carried weight. If you encounter an insurmountable danger, you may chant my name. Actually, I just want to use the gray fog to purify the contamination. Li Meng, imitating Audrey, stood up, bowed slightly, and said loudly. Thank you so much, Mr. Fool. You are truly generous. Seeing that Mr. Hanged Man's matter was concluded and Miss Justice also seemed to have nothing to say, Derek, the son, mustered his courage and asked. Mr. Hanged Man, I'd like to know what you are interested in. I am already a bard. What should I use to exchange for the formula of the next sequence? The things you mentioned, the tentacles of the gloomy jellyfish, crimson rot moss, I've heard of them in the underground market. But currently, my contributions are insufficient to obtain them. It would take at least a year before I might have access to them. At this point, Sun seemed hesitant, his voice becoming almost inaudible. If not for Mr. Fool's high-powered translation, Li Meng could hardly hear him. Could you help me advance to a higher sequence first? For example, sequence 5, maybe sequence 6. At that level, I could organize exploration teams to search for the materials you need. Sun is acting like since the debt is already high, why worry? It's very similar to how Hanged Man initially sold formulas to Miss Justice. In the end, Justice almost became a cash dispenser. Klein, watching the honest Sun, also starting to incur debt and even planning to take a loan to advance to sequence 6, felt it necessary to remind him. But on second thought, how should I say it? One person's online loan, the whole family repays the debt. Forget it, I'd better keep my mouth shut. As the initiator of this online social platform, what reason do I have to stop others from engaging in online transactions? Chapter 140. All of this is a blessing from Mr. Fool. Perhaps feeling embarrassed himself, son, Derek Berg added softly, his voice, even after Mr. Fool's translation, betraying his lack of confidence. My current combat abilities are too weak. If I can advance to sequence 7, I'm sure I can find a large amount of materials. The area around the City of Silver is full of monsters lurking in the shadows. The sun pathway is particularly suited for fighting here. I definitely won't let you down. Give me a year, no, half a year, and I'll be able to join an expedition team. I'll definitely bring back what you need. No, you've misunderstood me. Only a fool would calculate every single transaction clearly when dealing with others. As for me, I've long had my eye on something far more valuable. Of course, it's also because the formula itself costs nothing. The more times it's sold, the better. Even if I don't receive payment, it's not a loss. The completely cost-free nature of the loss made Li Meng exceptionally generous. He cleared his throat forcefully, interrupting Sun's already faltering voice. I believe that under Mr. Fool's witness, you will undoubtedly grow stronger. As for the materials I need, if your strength isn't sufficient, you absolutely must not force yourself. Your life and safety are the most important things. The formula for Sun Pathway Sequence 8, Light Supplicant. Please note it carefully. If you are uncertain, you can pray to Mr. Fool. Main ingredients: 1 piece of radiant stone, or powder from a blazing white soul, or blood from a mirror hedgehog, or the heart of a magma giant. Supplementary ingredients: 1 gold-edged sunflower, 3 drops of monkshood juice. I must remind you, you can only ingest the potion for the next sequence after the current sequence's potion has been fully digested. Li Meng's voice was relaxed and casual, making Klein feel waves of envy. If I hadn't pretended to be Mr. Fool back then, I might have gotten the formula much earlier. I wouldn't have had to wait until now, and I could be earning money openly and honestly. Why did I fabricate such a bizarre Mr. Fool? Thinking about it now, it's truly unbelievable. Mr. Hanged Man, your generosity and trust are truly impressive. If you need anything, I will do my utmost to find it. Sun's voice was somewhat excited, seemingly completely unprepared for how easily the formula had been obtained. All of this is a blessing from Mr. Fool. Li Meng hurriedly stood up modestly. Klein, who had just concluded the Tarot Club meeting, immediately noticed that the clown potion within him had digested another significant portion. This wasn't the kind of gradual, subtle assimilation, but a very intense, almost violent digestion. This meant that in a short period, he had engaged in role-playing that perfectly aligned with the potion's spiritual essence. Most crucially, before entering the Tarot Club, he had intended to observe carefully. Yet, once above the gray fog, he had unconsciously forgotten about it again. Large beads of cold sweat trickled from Klein's forehead. This feeling sent a chill down his spine even more intensely than the night he had first crossed over. All along, he had been striving for better role-playing in digestion of the potion. Yet, this digestion defied his own will, even making him unconsciously forget about the matter. This situation was far too bizarre. At that moment, he suddenly realized that after discovering the abnormal digestion of the clown potion, he hadn't performed a divination. This was very abnormal. As a qualified seer, encountering an unusual situation and not performing divination, was that acceptable? Thinking of this, Klein untied the crystal necklace wrapped around his left wrist and casually picked up a fountain pen and notebook. Right pointing arrow. The reason for the clown potion's digestion. The brown fountain pen, having barely left the paper, immediately moved forward again, scratching out that line of words and changing it to the danger level of divining this matter. Klein pressed the crystal pendant against the paper, closed his eyes, and began silently reciting the divination statement, sensing the blending of his astral body and information from the spirit world. After 7 repetitions, he opened his eyes. The crystal pendant hadn't moved an inch, as if it had been hanging there all along. The divination had failed. Klein was not at all surprised by this. He immediately took 4 steps backward and entered above the gray fog. Enduring the exhaustion from having just convened the Tarot Club, Klein materialized a sheet of grid paper he often used in his previous life and wrote a line in Chinese on it. Clown potion rapid digestion, reason unknown. Immediately after, he pushed this paper aside, placing it face down on the bronze long table. He adjusted his breathing slightly, allowing himself to relax. Sensing the progress of the potion digestion, he found that, as it was his astral body that had entered and the clown potion seemed to primarily affect the physical body, he could barely sense it now. Once again, he materialized paper and a fountain pen, writing on it in the Hermes language. Divine the danger level of the clown potion's digestion. Holding the pendulum, letting the pendant hang low, Klein allowed his spirit to settle rapidly, becoming quiet and ethereal. Half closing his eyes, he silently recited the divination statement 7 times, causing his spirituality to commune with the spirit world that resides above all. Feeling a slight tug on the silver chain, Klein opened his eyes and looked at the pendulum. At this sight, he froze on the spot. The topaz pendant began to rotate slowly clockwise, spinning faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, its speed had become so fast he could no longer see it clearly. It was like the aircraft engines he often saw before crossing over, as if afraid the plane would crash if it spun too slowly. He even felt that the necklace he was using for divination had developed its own emotions. It was an emotion of extreme fear in the face of danger, a terror as if it would explode on the spot if it spun any slower. But it was merely a virtual item condensed by his own will above the gray fog. As Klein let go, the necklace immediately turned into a wisp of gray mist, merging into the vast air around it, leaving no trace behind. You're just a necklace, do you need to be so dramatic? At that very moment, Klein suddenly realized he had forgotten why he was performing the divination. The paper before him, filled with the divination statement, also vanished into the air as the divination concluded. Fortunately, he had prepared in advance and written a backup. He picked up the grid paper he had pushed aside and looked at the line of Chinese written on it. Divine the danger level of eternal blazing sun. Oh, so it was about divining one of the true deities of the 7 major churches, no wonder it was so dangerous. My current strength is insufficient. Matters like this are better left for later, after I've advanced to a higher sequence. His nearly depleted spirituality made Klein's headache intensify, and a cacophony of mad whispers echoed in his ears. Rubbing his temples, Klein wrapped himself in his spirituality and returned to the real world. He felt utterly exhausted and drowsy, as if he had been rushing about for 7 days and nights without rest. His body uncontrollably fell onto the bed. His head hadn't even touched the pillow before he began to snore. His mind was a complete blank. He had never slept so soundly before. Chapter 141, Shepherd's Gloves versus the Wriggling Hunger. As the Tarot Club meeting concluded, Li Meng opened his eyes on the bed in a hotel in the Northern District. 3 days earlier, after finishing his business at Backland Bank, he had transferred onto the subway and a public carriage, preparing to return to No. 7 Iron Gate Street. To prevent being followed, he usually disembarked several hundred meters from his residence, then walked in circles for a while, shaking off any possible pursuers before finally returning home. This time, since he was returning relatively early, he got off at an even farther location, intending to walk home while enjoying the moonlight. Of course, the smog-filled nights of Backland and the crimson moonlight made moon-gazing an extremely niche activity. At least tonight, very few people on the streets were looking up at the moon. Li Meng strolled casually down the street, his mind recalling some famous moon-themed poems from before his transmigration. Unfortunately, poetry was different from novels. Without the requisite skill, one couldn't simply copy it. Li Meng also wasn't one of those transmigrators with extraordinary memory who could recall every piece of trashy fiction they'd ever casually read. Just as Li Meng thought he had no connection to the path of literary plagiarism, a circular black hole on the ground nearby caught the corner of his eye. It was a manhole entrance, its cover inexplicably cast aside. How inconsiderate. What if someone accidentally fell in at night? The decades of good quality education he'd received before transmigrating erupted at this moment. Li Meng walked over and picked up the manhole cover. Enhanced by the power of the wind blessed, the several dozen-pound cast iron cover was lifted as easily as a round biscuit, the entire process not even making a sound. Carrying the cover, he walked to the sewer entrance and casually glanced down. In the dim moonlight, a bloody corpse lay at the bottom of the sewer, its head even split open halfway, white brain matter and red blood splattered everywhere. A man with speckles of blood on his clothes was climbing up the iron ladder on the side. The bloodstains on the black glove on his right hand easily identified him as the murderer. As if noticing the moonlight ahead being blocked, the man suddenly looked up. 2 pairs of eyes instantly met. A wave of killing intent flashed in the murderer's dark green eyes, and large patches of bluish-black fish scales emerged all over his body. This posture was all too familiar to Li Meng. He swiftly slammed the manhole cover onto the opening. The moment the cover fell into place, a fierce gale wrapped around a human figure and erupted, blowing the cast iron cover away to who knows where. The man's distinctively broad jaw and brown hair tied in an ancient warrior's topknot at the back brought a name to Li Meng's mind: Vice Admiral Hurricane Kilangos. Although they both possessed a mystical item crafted from a shepherd Beander characteristic, the Kilangos before him was absolutely not someone he could contend with. For no other reason than this, while he possessed more mystical items, the power exerted by sealed artifacts with similar effects largely depended on the user's strength. He had only just been promoted to Shadow Ascetic, while the other party was a Sequence 6 Wind Blessed, and a pirate long famous on the seas. As for the Scholar's Book number 9998, no combat abilities had been discovered in it so far. Kilangos clearly had no intention of leaving any witnesses either. Though far from the sea, his ferocity hadn't diminished in the slightest. Just as Li Meng activated the wind-blessed soul within the shepherd's gloves number 9998, he suddenly noticed the surroundings abruptly change. The crimson moonlight grew softer, and his eyelids became unusually heavy, making him feel as if he could fall asleep at any moment. Dream invasion. The other party wanted to use the nightmare's ability to silently pull him into a dream. Li Meng immediately abandoned the idea of channeling spirituality into the wind-blessed soul to summon wind for escape. Using such abilities in front of a genuine wind-blessed would be nothing but self-humiliation. To deal with a nightmare, was there anything more suitable than a dream stealer? Kilangos quietly closed in on Li Meng while guiding the dream. He planned to first pull the other into the dream, then deliver a fatal blow with the interrogator's mental pierce. He was very proficient in this combat style. He'd let this nameless passerby know the consequences of meddling. Since the wriggling hunger could only use one ability at a time, Qilangos guided Li Meng's dream with extreme patience, trying to draw him deeper into it. That way, when he switched souls, the other wouldn't be able to wake up in time, increasing the chance of success on the next attempt. But was this dream invasion a bit too successful this time? Watching the other's ugly state of indulgence in a pleasant dream, he couldn't help but let out a sinister chuckle. Go to the abyss of storms to continue your sweet dream, fool. Qilangos instantly switched the wriggling hunger to the interrogator soul. Seeing that the other party seemed not to have woken from the pleasant dream yet, he unleashed mental pierce without hesitation. In an instant, Qilangos felt his mind go blank, as if he had forgotten something. A sharp, intense pain pierced through his brain, nearly halting his thoughts. Along with the tearing agony in his mind came physical paralysis and pain. He was very familiar with this sensation. He had suffered the same attack when fighting the interrogator he had killed. That feeling had left a deep impression on him. In return, he had shepherded that interrogator's soul, leaving it to struggle in agony while fighting for him. This was the mental pierce he had released. He hadn't expected it to return to him. The other party had been pretending all along, not truly drawn into the dream, but using the dream to mislead him and launch a sneak attack. Relying on the wind-blessed's robust physique, Qilangos quickly shook off the negative effects of the mental pierce. A fierce gale swept up his body, lifting him gently into the air as he pointed his right hand at Li Meng. Seeing the glove on Qilangos's right hand change from black to white, a golden light igniting at his fingertips, Li Meng activated the paper figurine substitute without hesitation. This was the first time he had used the substitute ability from the faceless soul since obtaining the shepherd's gloves. A golden sunbeam, thick as an arm, descended from the sky, instantly piercing through Li Meng's body and burning a large black pit into the ground. Li Meng's figure burned away like paper, leaving only black ashes behind. Qilangos frowned, his dark green eyes transforming into pale gold, merciless vertical pupils. Under this gaze, he quickly spotted a faint silhouette behind a plane tree not far away. The figure was almost merged with the tree's shadow. Even passing by, it would be hard to notice someone hiding there. The corner of Qilangos's mouth lifted into a cruel smile. A massive golden flame plummeted from the sky, its target precisely the shadow behind the plane tree. No matter what tricks you have, they're no match for an experienced pirate general. Chapter 142, Does Paying Still Count as Acting? After a bitter struggle, Li Meng finally recognized a fact. Qilangos and his mystical items were specifically designed to suppress him. Of course, this was also because of his low sequence. If he were sequence 5, his abilities would greatly counter the opponent, even leaving Qilangos with no way to escape. When two Beyonders with similar combat methods clash, the one with the lower sequence is the one in an awkward position. And Li Meng just happened to be the one with the lower sequence. Lacking the influence of the true creator's ravings, he was also unable to use those mutated and twisted abilities. This led both sides into an awkward scenario of competing spiritualities. The battle was exceptionally fierce, with moves exchanged back and forth. The Priest of Lights, Holy Light, shattered and burned many of the surrounding flowers, trees, floorboards, and manhole covers, while Li Meng's paper figurine substitutes and shadow stealth appeared and disappeared unpredictably, making them hard to defend against. However, as a wind-blessed, Qilangos was enveloped by fierce winds, giving him movement speed and physical attributes far exceeding Li Meng's, making Li Meng's sneak attacks almost entirely futile. Since Qilangos couldn't handle the negative effects of sealed artifacts well, he only carried the wriggling hunger. This meant that although he could easily identify Li Meng's psychological invisibility and lock onto his position through a psychiatrist, he couldn't land a fatal blow on Li Meng. The battle situation became deadlocked for a time. Li Meng's paper figurine substitutes were running low, and his spirituality was gradually starting to dry up. Although Qilangos had sufficient spirituality and no serious injuries, this was, after all, the capital of the Loan Kingdom. Powerful experts from the churches and official organizations could arrive at any moment. Every extra moment he stayed brought more risk. He had infiltrated Backland for a major matter, and killing was merely to resolve the negative effects of the wriggling hunger. As for killing Li Meng, that was entirely incidental. On the sea, one didn't even need a reason to kill. Since this person before him had seen his secret, his death was all the more justified. But he just wouldn't die obediently. Qilangos could feel that the opponent's strength was far inferior to his own. With just a bit more effort, he could soon deal with this trouble. For a normal low-sequence Beander, their spirituality wasn't enough to support the long-term use of high-power sealed artifacts, yet the person before him was still struggling after switching abilities dozens of times. This wasn't mysticism. Those powerful sealed artifacts also had terrifyingly powerful negative effects. Even for certain special sequences with sufficient spirituality to last longer, they still couldn't avoid triggering the sealed artifact's negative effects. Meanwhile, Li Meng's mind began to fill with bursts of chaotic sounds, and the circulation of his spirituality gradually became sluggish. Qilangos saw Li Meng's movements start to slow down. A hint of ruthlessness flashed in his pale gold vertical pupils, and the black glove on his right hand bit heavily into the muscle of his left arm. The wriggling hunger seemed to come to life, extending countless fine black threads that wrapped around his left arm. Qilangos let out a muffled groan and forcefully pulled the glove away from his left arm. His originally sturdy left arm, once filled with fresh red flesh, had now become skin and bones, like the arm of a dying man, while the wriggling hunger had changed to look as if it had just been soaked in blood, a dripping fresh red. Under the crimson moon, Qilangos's pale gold vertical pupils emitted a faint glow. Everything before him decomposed into streaks of black shadows, and the shadows beneath several trees appeared exceptionally heavy. Countless specks of golden light lit up near the wriggling hunger, like fireflies flickering in the night. Without a second thought, Li Meng immediately activated the life siphon spell, using a paper figurine substitute to swap his body into a nearby shadow, followed by activating his phantom scales all over his body. The flickering golden light turned into beams of dazzling, sharp arrows, swiftly piercing through Li Meng's body and the paper figurine substitute, burning and incinerating all the nearby flowers, trees, and shadowed areas. Li Meng only felt a sharp pain in his chest. Looking down, there was already a hole larger than a bowl, through which he could even see the moonlight behind him. Fortunately, the life siphon spell was unaffected, still burning his already extremely weak body to restore his spirituality. Li Meng used the Faceless's damage transfer from his glove to move the wound to his left arm. His left arm immediately lost sensation, no longer able to make any movements. Not far away, a gust of fierce wind swirled around Qilangos, and he quickly disappeared from sight. After this strike, his spirituality was also exhausted. Whether the opponent died or not was no longer important. What mattered was that he himself could not die. Li Meng supported himself with his right hand on a piece of charred wood and struggled to stand up. Seeing a crowd approaching from not far away, he used his last bit of spirituality to wrap around himself and sank into the nearby Tasok River. The wide and swift river water submerged his body, causing him to completely disappear into the Tasok River. Backland Queen District. Audrey sat bored on a swing in the garden, looking at the lotus flowers blooming in the nearby pond, reflecting on the events of the Tarot Club. The Hanged Man had encountered danger and was being attacked by Vice Admiral Hurricane Qilangos, hoping someone in the Tarot Club would notify the church. Mr. Fool obviously wouldn't handle such a matter, and the Sun seemed to not even know where Backland was, making it even more impossible for him to report it. Then she could only go herself. Although she didn't lack money, if Mr. Hanged Man really were killed, she would have nowhere to spend her money. Right pointing arrow. But how to tell the church or the authorities about this? Although she was a devout believer of the Evernight goddess, if she mentioned this to a certain bishop, she would have to explain her source of information and might even expose the fact that she was a Beander. It seemed the psychology alchemists, who mastered the spectator pathway, were defined as an evil organization by the authorities. It would also be difficult for her to explain the origin of her potion formula, and she couldn't prove that she had no connection to the psychology alchemists. After all, a while ago, she had even contacted members of the psychology alchemists, preparing to join the organization. Right, how could I forget my superpower? I can have Furs and the others go, I'll just give them some compensation. Why do I always think about going myself? As a qualified spectator, shouldn't I be secretly influencing others and manipulating them to achieve my goals? £100 seems like a suitable amount. Yes, that's it. But does paying still count as acting? Whatever, my spectator potion has already been fully digested. What I should be thinking about now is the matter of the telepathous potion materials. Just as Audrey was thinking about how to have furs and the others notify the church, she saw Susie walking over with a leisurely pace. Yes, leisurely. Through a period of effort, she was already able to successfully observe Susie. As a dog, Susie's movements were surprisingly standard. For example, when humans show joy, some laugh, some cry, and some are expressionless. This requires a spectator to combine other movements, language, gestures, and so on for a comprehensive judgment to reach a final conclusion. But Susie was different. Her movements to express happiness were always wagging her tail left and right, about one cycle every 20 seconds, with an upward angle of 45 degrees, and the whole process would stop after about 15 repetitions. Every movement, every expression, and every posture was like it had been meticulously practiced and then performed on a stage. Even when Susie sniffed the scent of food, the frequency of her nose twitching was the same. Truly a strange dog. Susie walked unhurriedly to the stone bench beside the swing, found a comfortable position to lie down, and turned her golden dog head to look at Audrey. Audrey, have you run into trouble? Am I being that obvious? Shouldn't the action of swinging be seen as a sign of relaxation in the eyes of a spectator? Seemingly seeing Audrey's confusion, Susie explained in her tone that seemed eternally unchanging. You haven't moved your swing for a long time. Also, you're gripping the rope too hard. If you were in a relaxed state, you'd only need to ensure you don't tilt over on the swing. There's no need to grip it so tightly. You've never even been on a swing, how would you know? Audrey retorted feebly in her heart. I was just thinking about where to obtain the materials for telepathous. Audrey, do you mean the next sequence for spectator is telepathous? Susie turned her head, letting her gaze no longer look at Audrey. Audrey suddenly felt much more relaxed, able to enter the spectator state. Yes, I've already gotten the formula, but there are no materials I need in the family warehouse. Father really is something, putting in some stones and glass with no spirituality at all. They're useless except for taking up space. For you humans, isn't the more normal way to obtain them to spend money to buy them? Audrey shook her head gently, her voice tinged with melancholy. I've been to Mr. A's place, and there weren't any materials I needed. Susie, do you know Mr. A? I feel like his whole being exudes an evil sensation, especially his gaze, which makes one feel disgusted and makes me not want to go there again. Your feeling is correct. Mr. A is a lunatic, but there's no danger in attending his gatherings. Susie's voice was flat and without ripples, as if stating the simplest fact. I found this out while chatting with the dog at their house. Audrey seemed to have discovered something and pointed at the golden retriever's tail, saying with a bit of pride. Susie, you lied again. Your tail only wagged once, and the amplitude was very large. You've misunderstood. I was just driving away a dragonfly that crawled onto the bench. Susie wagged her tail again, the movement exactly the same as before. Then do you also suggest I go to Mr. A's gathering? Yes, you can take me with you. Going is no problem, but won't your talking scare others? Pay attention to my eyes. Susie turned her head, her black pupils shining brightly under the moonlight. Chapter 143, Erroneous Historical Knowledge. In the forsaken land of the gods, amidst boundless and endless darkness, an old man and a red-haired young man walked slowly across the withered, barren earth. The old man wore a black classical robe and a matching pointed soft hat, carrying a long staff on his back. Wrinkles had quietly crept onto his forehead and the corners of his eyes, making him look increasingly aged. He hunched his back, barely managing to keep the overly long staff on his back from directly poking into the ground. The young man behind him had his arms bare, his exposed skin densely covered with flame-shaped scars. In his right hand, he held a leather lantern. Under the candle's illumination, his blood vessels were clearly visible, and the candle's flame was stained blood red by the untrimmed blood within the leather. Occasional flashes of lightning momentarily illuminated this world before swiftly fading, leaving only rumbles of thunder that made one's heart tremble with fear. The young man quickened his pace, caught up to the old man, and pointed at the staff on the old man's back. Why are we walking for so long? Can't you use the sealed artifact a few more times? The old man shook his head with a bitter smile. Can't do that, can't do that. My wanderer's staff, while it allows travel within the forsaken land of the gods, distinguishes between lightness and heaviness. Anyone with strong spirituality and deep desires walking on the path it opens will find it becomes exceptionally heavy, consuming an incalculable amount of spirituality. After moving you several times, my spirituality is nearly depleted, and the wanderer's staff has become incredibly heavy. If I hadn't trained diligently, I'd probably be lying on the ground, unable to move by now. Then let me carry it for you. Beyonders of the hunter pathway never lack strength. As he spoke, the red-haired young man reached for the staff on the old man's back without a hint of seeking permission. The old man stopped walking. Without a word, he watched calmly as the young man reached for the staff behind him. The young man casually tried to lift it with one hand, then his expression froze. Somewhat awkwardly, he put down the lantern, extended both hands, and gripped the staff with force, his already dark red face flushing even deeper crimson. The staff remained firmly on the old man's back, unmoving. The young man sheepishly released his tight grip on the staff. Note 1011, you're a meander of the apprentice pathway. Why are you so strong? The old man strained to straighten his back, only to find the staff poking the ground, so he hunched over again, his voice utterly flat. Habit. As he spoke, he raised his right hand. A layered, shimmering light door appeared, sending a fallen creature that had been hiding in the darkness, waiting for an opportunity to ambush them, back into the spirit world. The young man hurriedly picked up the lantern, quickened his pace to catch up, alternately flexing his somewhat sore hands as he asked curiously. Note 1011, have you been to the land of betrayal? What's it really like there? Is there really a sun? And truly none of these ugly monsters? The old man, carrying his staff, seemed reluctant to say more. Number 7773, in a little while, we'll leave the forsaken land of the gods. Then you can see for yourself. The two fell into silence again, continuing their walk across the deeply furrowed earth. The sky gradually shifted from black to deep red, even showing a hint of yellow. The old man suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky, at that touch of deep yellow. Number 7773 almost bumped into the staff on the old man's back. The elder slowly took the staff from his back, with difficulty planted it into the ground, supported himself with one hand on the staff, and grabbed number 7773 with the other. We're almost there. Number 23 is waiting for you at the Giant King's court. I'll use Note 1011's Wanderer's staff one more time. Stay close. In the forsaken land of the gods, if you get lost in the spirit world, it's very hard to return. Especially for mid to low sequence clones like you. The staff gradually grew indistinct, twisting into a gray key that extended from the earth, growing larger and larger until it expanded to the twilight horizon beyond the reach of the naked eye. Number 7773 tightly gripped the old man's withered arm, feeling the surrounding time and space rapidly flow past. In the span of a few breaths, he arrived at the end of that gray key. The key reverted to its staff form, now longer than before. One end was planted in the ground, the other end appearing half a body taller than No. 1011. Note 1011 struggled to pull out the staff, his back arched like a bow, barely managing to place it on his back without letting the other end touch the ground. In the nearly solidified twilight not far away stood a series of extremely tall and majestic palaces. Even from a great distance, one could sense their grandeur. The long passage of time had caused large sections of these palaces' outer walls to collapse, revealing equally decayed inner walls. These palaces were constructed directly from massive stone blocks, each stone's weight far exceeding No. 7773's imagination. Even as a hunter, he wasn't confident he could lift the smallest of them. Let's go. Nothing much to see here. The old man paid no heed to the scene before him, proceeding along a small path worn deep with footprints. The Giant King's court. This is the Giant King's court. I heard from number 3002 that the Giant King was killed by his eldest son, the god of dawn, Badhail, who then rebuilt a new Giant King's court in St. Milam and changed himself into the god of combat. Maybe there are many mystical items inside. We could go in and search. If I find an angel's Beander characteristic, I'd qualify for promotion to demigod. No 7773's face was excited, his eyes fixed on the distant giant king's court, unwilling to take a single step away. Don't even think about it. The outside has long been explored many times by other clones. As for the innermost palaces, number 0 issued an order, no clone may enter unless he permits it. Let's go. You can throw away the lantern, there won't be any monsters here. No 1011 didn't look back, trudging forward with effort. Number 7773 hesitated for a long time but ultimately threw away the lantern and strode forward, following the old man. No 3002's historical knowledge contains many errors. You must never mention them in the land of betrayal. For example, the origin of the god of combat, the history of the Church of the Night, and everything about the sun god, these are all taboos. No 1011, looking at the young man following him, finally couldn't resist giving a few instructions. I know you're good at provocation, but some words must be held back. The outside is not the forsaken land of the gods. The 7 gods are true deities, and the number of clones who have died by their hands is beyond count. Most of the vacant numbers you see come from the Church of the 7 gods. In short, you must act like a genuine Beander, not a clone of Amon. Number 7773 suddenly asked with some surprise. You haven't spoken the whole way. Why are you talking so much now? No 1011 didn't mind no 7773's rudeness at all, his voice sounding slightly strained. No 23's potion wasn't digested very well. I was worried no one would remind you. I don't want to deliver another clone again in a short time. No 1011's Wanderer's staff, while convenient to use, is too exhausting. The old man adjusted the staff on his back, lifting it slightly further from the ground. Chapter 144, The Inverted Hungry Ghost. Chapter 144, The Inverted Hungry Ghost. Please subscribe, please recommend. This, life siphon spell, is really sinister. Li Meng lay on the bed, watching the female attendant in white pinafores bustling about like ants outside the window, and suddenly had the idea of committing suicide to transmigrate back. After escaping from the Tasok River, he used the Faceless's ability to change his appearance, transforming into the kind of old money aristocrat commonly seen in the North District, and found a seemingly upscale hotel to stay in. It must be said that Backland Bank's blue card was still quite useful. Even after the banknotes he carried on his person were soaked, Li Meng successfully booked a room. Having swum in the water for a full hour and a half this time, the 500 pounds on him, already scorched by the holy light, were completely soaked again. The king's portrait on them was no longer visible, rendering them utterly unusable. What the life siphon spell drained was not just vitality and spirit, but also something Li Meng had never been aware of until now: hope. This realization jolted him awake only after suicidal thoughts emerged. As a transmigrator, Li Meng possessed considerable fighting spirit. After all, he was neither an official second generation nor a rich second generation. As long as he had a decent starting point after transmigrating, he could accept it. As for having no cheats, no old grandpa in a ring, and the like, he couldn't care less. After all, the world he transmigrated into wasn't a romance novel or an invincible power fantasy, but the mysterious and dangerous world of Lord of the Mysteries. In such a place, merely surviving was extremely difficult for a transmigrator. Not only had he successfully survived up to Sequence 7, but he also had significant room for future advancement. Reaching at least Sequence 5 shouldn't be a problem. So what was with these waves of suicidal impulse? Thinking of this, he turned his gaze toward the number 9998 Scholar's Book on the table nearby. The Scholar's Book had now turned pure white. In the hotel's somewhat dim room, it radiated a faint sense of holiness and purity. From the creature growth spell that suddenly turned Lola into a vampire, to this hope-draining, life siphon spell, if he still couldn't tell this book was causing trouble, then his transmigration would have been in vain, an insult to the intelligence of transmigrators. Li Meng picked up the book and gently opened it. This time, he didn't use his fingers, didn't even look at the page numbers. He closed his eyes and randomly opened to a page. The paper of the Scholar's Book was soft and supple, like well-maintained ladies' skin. The text on it had also become clean and white. Paired with the dark gray cosmic background illustrations, it looked like a beautifully packaged but poorly written popular novel. It was just that the content of the text completely ruined this artistic conception. Idiot, why did you absorb so much? Now we've been discovered. This was a line of pure white Hermes language text. I only took a tiny sip. I found a book in his memories that said an old grandpa hid in a ring and absorbed energy for 3 whole years, and the youth still didn't notice. This was a line of seemingly black and chaotic text. After twisting on the page, it transformed into ancient giant script that Li Meng could understand. Could you use your brain? Your current power is at least 10,000 times that of a mortal. Even a mere 10,000th of it is more than a mortal can bear. The white text appeared far away from the black text. Even though it was just a line of text, Li Meng sensed a feeling of disdain. Then what do you suggest? I also found a novel where the protagonist transmigrated and didn't even have a Dantian, but he still forged a unique cultivation path. The black text became even more chaotic, twisted, and difficult to decipher. The white text moved even farther away. Wake up. The rulers of our world are. Our source of power is. And you want to forge another cultivation path. Why don't you just discard your Sephira, start again from sequence 9, and create a new supernatural pathway? Maybe you'll become the 5th pillar then. Looking at the densely packed snowflake-like symbols above, Li Meng felt helpless but also knew he had touched upon some forbidden knowledge. If truly revealed, he might transmigrate again immediately. Didn't you already lose 1 Sephira and 1 supernatural pathway? You seem clever. Why don't you give it a try? Before the black text finished displaying, it was erased by a flash of white light. Stop reading that trashy fiction. You, a dignified, what have you become now? Do you know why this planet was destroyed? It was precisely because there was too much of this kind of fiction, filling the entire world's humans with lazy, stupid, filthy ideas, angering. He woke from his slumber wanting to eliminate these fabricating authors, but overdid it and destroyed the world. Several lines of white text appeared in one go, cramming the page full, even starting to turn pages automatically. Didn't you say before that this world was destroyed because, was awakened wanting to play a prank here? Besides, hiding here for thousands of years is too boring. Finally, something interesting appears, so I just took a look. If not fiction, should I look at your so-called knowledge? Oh, sorry, I forgot yours got lost. Not much knowledge left now anyway. A series of strange black symbols gave Li Meng a headache. The most tempting poison in the world was content you couldn't see out of curiosity, but seeing it meant death. No matter how much was lost, it's still better than you, an idiot who even devoured your own brain. If you still want to devour this world's then stay put quietly. Stop reading that fiction and turning yourself as stupid as those protagonists in the novels. The white text grew larger and emitted a dazzling, sun-like radiance. I only sent down an avatar this time, carrying just an ordinary uniqueness, without even my previous memories. Even if it's lost, it's no big deal. I traverse countless worlds. I've devoured who knows how many such uniquenesses. I couldn't care less about such a loss. The black text churned and surged, showing no intention of backing down before the white text. Then I'll hand you over right now. There are still many false gods queuing up for promotion. I'm sure they'd welcome you. The white text didn't even want to appear on the same page as the black text, turning to a separate page alone. Don't think I'm afraid of you. You're carrying a Sephira. Won't those true gods seek promotion? The black text pressed close to the white text, completely disregarding the other's threat. Forgot to tell you, the Sephira I carry, no true god of a similar pathway in this world has been born yet. But you're different. There are at least 4 similar pathways, dozens of false gods ready to perform rituals for you and begin promotion at any time. This time, the white text was unusually calm. Li Meng even sensed a flavor of the conspiracy succeeded, scheme succeeding. After a long silence, the black text slowly surfaced on the page, completely devoid of its previous arrogant bluster. What do we do then? This mortal is a survivor from the previous civilization one finally, with great difficulty, found, chosen one, a pure person not carrying the *** aura. He is a very important piece on the board after the apocalypse arrives. I must ensure his safety. The white text appeared calmly and slowly on the page, right next to the black text. He's not dead either. Looking at his condition, he can still live for several days. The black text had just surfaced when it was erased again by the white text. Mortals are very fragile. They cannot lose hope, reason, spirituality, and such things, otherwise they face death at any moment. But I've never spat out anything I've swallowed. The black text wriggled stubbornly, like a final act of defiance. Li Meng finally understood where the things he lost after using the life siphon spell had gone. It was just that the black and white texts in the book kept saying, "Mortal, this and mortal, that." This familiar tone reminded him of the celestial dragons before his transmigration. I'm not asking you to spit it out. You just need to let a tiny bit of the uniqueness's aura touch him, and he'll recover. Just like you did before with your foolish believers. Will he die then? The black text showed slight hesitation. Didn't those believers of yours before not all die? The white text moved another 3 or 4 lines away from the black text. Why would I care if they live or die? I just got annoyed listening to them, so I gave them something to pass the time, send them away. Sometimes they all died, sometimes a few remained. I never cared either way. I really don't know why those believers died. I don't even know why they worshipped me. As for what benefits they gained, that wasn't my blessing either, it was mostly their own luck. The black text didn't mind at all. Instead, it started moving closer to the white text. Why is it that your believers are all fine, at most a bit mentally abnormal? The scholar's book turned to a new page, where lines of white text appeared. Divine sacrificial ritual. Find an empty space. Place 4 portions of leftover food. Spread your arms. Recite loudly in Hermes language. Greedy devourer, inverted hungry ghost, coward hiding in shadows, brainless idiot, good for nothing who only knows how to eat, quickly bestow your power upon me. Otherwise, I'll throw you into the hands of those self-proclaimed weakling gods, letting you witness the power of false gods. Looking at this prayer, Li Meng felt a bit dizzy. He didn't even know how many deities this seemingly provocative Hermes language phrase could anger. Just as he hesitated, another line of black text appeared below. Before he could clearly see what the black text said, it was erased by white light. A line of exceptionally clear white runic script appeared right in the middle of the page. If you don't want to die, recite it quickly. The black text struggled on the paper a few more times, but before it could fully form, it was erased by white light. Li Meng pushed open the door with some difficulty. A red-vested attendant nearby immediately approached. "Sir, what service do you require?" "Bring me 4 portions of cooked food." Li Meng thought for a moment, then took out the Backland Bank blue card. 1 portion of Demir seafood, 1 portion of Fenipote noodles, 1 portion of desi pie, and 1 portion of fresh rice. Deliver it to my room, please be as quick as possible. Watching the attendant's retreating figure, Li Meng silently memorized the ritual's incantation several times in his mind, ultimately dismissing the idea of rehearsing it once in advance. Chapter 145, Transmigrator and Native. Li Meng watched as the red-vested waiter carried 4 prepared dishes, placing them lightly on the table, still emitting the steaming aroma of being freshly cooked. He really wanted to take a few bites. But thinking that these were offerings for a deity, especially one who might still be in the room, he ultimately restrained his hand reaching for the desi pie. Watching the waiter depart from the window, Li Meng closed the bay window, pulled down the curtains, double-locked the door, walked to the table set with food, and began guiltily reciting the honorific name provided by the scholar's book. Greedy devourer, hanged starving ghost, coward hiding in the shadows, brainless fool, useless waste who only knows how to eat. For some reason, at this moment, the scene of number 57 saying, Leodoro, the instant he woke up began to surface in his mind. Open black lens bracket written here, I hope readers will remember our domain name. Reading Taiwan novels is super great, close black lens bracket. That mass of world-destroying thunder. Quickly bestow your power upon me, or I will throw you into the hands of those weaklings who call themselves gods, and let you witness the power of false gods. Just as he finished reciting, Li Meng saw the entire room become terrifying and eerie, like the few minutes before a rainstorm arrives. The body's spirituality was completely compressed into the astral body. He could no longer feel any external things, let alone communicate with the spirit world. Vision, smell, and hearing were all sealed. He couldn't even feel the existence of his own body, leaving only the thoughts in his brain still functioning. At this moment, Li Meng truly experienced being a vegetable, unable to even sense the existence of the world and space. The next moment, these terrifying sensations all vanished, as if they had never happened. Li Meng's body regained sensation, his eyes could see again, and he was surprised to find that the space before him seemed much emptier. Scanning the room, he realized the table and the 4 food items on it had all disappeared. This deity receiving the sacrifice really wasn't picky, they even took the table. As he moved around, Li Meng found his body had returned to normal, and the depletion caused by the life siphon spell had been completely restored. More importantly, he felt that his hermit potion seemed to have digested quite a bit. Since taking the sequence 7 potion, he had been trying to figure out the acting method for a shadow ascetic, but had made no progress. Just when he thought the acting method for a shadow ascetic was to find an extremely remote place and persist in bitter cultivation, this digestion of the potion seemed to point him toward a feasible path. He remembered that a clown's acting didn't require actually being a clown in a circus, and a trickmaster didn't actually have to perform tricks, so a shadow ascetic might not actually need to hide away to cultivate. He didn't reject asceticism, but doing so would likely cause his promotion speed to fall behind Audrey and Klein, making it difficult to sell formulas later. However, for now, the most urgent issue was to resolve the cause and effect of this scholar's book No. 9998. The secrets hidden in this book far exceeded his imagination. Now the book had turned a grayish-white, just like the floor, lying quietly on the ground. Someone with poor eyesight might even confuse it with the floor tiles. Li Meng bent down to pick up the book and calmly flipped to the first page. That line of white text appeared again, this time in runic script, as standard and neat as if printed from a woodblock. You may write 3 questions on this page. I will answer based on your level of receptivity. Of course, you can also demand the complete truth. I am not responsible for the consequences after you hear the truth. Do not disturb me casually, my time is very precious. Li Meng placed the book on the bed and sat at the bedside in silence for a long time before opening the door and asking a passing waiter for a semi-old fountain pen. Who are you? Li Meng hesitated for a moment before writing the first question. I am the great, the lofty, the mysterious, the wise. Lines of white text floated up, but they were all mixed with various symbols that Li Meng did not recognize at all. At the very end of the white text, Li Meng finally understood one sentence. It was in Dragonish. Fortunately, number 4 had instilled enough knowledge back then, giving him mastery over almost most of the influential languages on the continent, which allowed him to barely identify this language that had vanished into the long river of history. Controller of destiny, peeper of fate, creator of knowledge, cycler of history. What kind of big shot was this? Even the 7 gods didn't have such arrogant honorific names. As if sensing Li Meng's thoughts, another line of runic script appeared below. Do not compare me with those false gods who don't even possess a sephira. This is disrespectful to a true deity. The white text gradually faded. Li Meng thought for a long time before writing down the second question. Who am I? The number 9998 scholar's book suddenly went quiet. Just as Li Meng thought those white words wouldn't appear again, the scholar's book flipped to a new page on its own. What appeared this time was still runic script. You are a remnant of the previous era, preserved until now by some special method. Li Meng frowned and read this line of text repeatedly, a bad thought suddenly occurring to him. Was his transmigration fake? Then how to explain that he knew some of the plot? Although this plot was very unreliable and he often needed to see the characters from the story appear before he could remember it. But that was the plot, after all. There was still a big difference between a transmigrator and a local. No matter how poorly a transmigrator fared, they had a sense of superiority over the local natives. This came from familiarity with the plot, watching the vivid characters from the story walking around in front of him, knowing what kind of people they were, knowing what they were going to do, and knowing their future fates. He understood them better than they understood themselves. That feeling was something only a transmigrator could experience. But the meaning of this line of white text clearly indicated that he was a person from here. How could Li Meng bear this? After this line of white text appeared, it just stayed there, with no intention of disappearing and no movement toward further explanation. He seemingly had 3 questions, but the right of interpretation was entirely in the other party's hands, and Li Meng's doubts only increased. Then why do I know the plot? This time the white text reacted very quickly. Li Meng even read a sense of excitement from it. Because I am the peeper of fate. Fabricating some plausible-sounding plot is simply too easy. Don't you find it interesting? When we flip through the memories in a person's mind and they are full of transmigration, cheats, and other worlds, we give him the memory of a transmigrator, and even fabricate a novel for him. It's very interesting, isn't it? At the end of the page, there was a line of even larger white text. Isn't this your dream? I helped you realize it along the way. Li Meng repeated it once, and his thoughts suddenly exploded in his mind. Various voices turned into a mess, and even the hermit potion that had begun to digest showed signs of losing control. Chapter 146. It took 3 minutes. The shadow ascetic potion he had swallowed had now turned into a deadly poison, like worms burrowing into his body, beginning to throb frantically. They even burst from beneath Li Meng's skin, transforming into black and red intertwined tentacles covered in suckers. These tentacles didn't just drain physical energy, they sprouted from his mind body and spirit body simultaneously, connecting Li Meng's own spirituality with the spirit world. They writhed frantically, trying to drag Li Meng's astral body completely into the spirit world, turning him into an out-of-control spirit world creature. Li Meng could feel that this loss of control didn't come from the true creator. The HLKY necklace was still securely around his neck. The true creator and other hidden existences couldn't directly affect him. At that moment, a flash of inspiration struck Li Meng, and he thought of a very important question. The shadow ascetic potion, as the name suggests, lies in concealment. Where is the most hidden place in the world? The spirit world. A potion's loss of control is often caused by the mental residue within the potion. For a low-sequence potion, the internal mental residue often reflects the characteristics of the potion itself. Since the potion in his body had gone out of control and was dragging him into the spirit world, it meant that the best acting method for the shadow ascetic potion was to enter the spirit world. Even if he lost control, the potion could control his body to enter the spirit world and completely digest itself, only it would digest away the part of him that was human. Thinking of this, Li Meng made a prompt decision and controlled his astral body to follow those protruding tentacles into the spirit world. The surroundings were filled with indescribable, illusory, transparent things. All colors became vivid and distinct yet overlapped with one another, while a gray mist diffused and shrouded everything with a faint, ethereal presence. The next second, his body appeared in the spirit world. That easy. It was so simple that even Li Meng himself couldn't believe it. Amidst his surprise, he began to look around. Where he was a blood-red world. Everything here was red. The colors of all things were composed of red, differing only in shades, like the work of a clumsy painter who only used red paint. The sky was abstracted into light red grids, and the earth became small dark red blood spheres. Li Meng could even feel the sliminess and disgust beneath his feet. In the very center of the land grew countless tentacles identical to those from Li Meng's loss of control, only thousands of times larger. These tentacles writhed frantically, trying to grab, tear, and devour everything that approached. They even wanted to tear down and eat the sky that had been abstracted into grids. A thought surfaced in Li Meng's mind. He wanted to fly higher so he could see everything in this mysterious place clearly. The moment the thought emerged, his body flew up as easily as walking on the ground, without any effort. He saw a huge black hole of unknown depth on the land surrounded by tentacles. On the edge of the black hole grew dense teeth, like the mouth of a large mollusk. As his gaze passed over, the black hole suddenly contracted, and the dense teeth bit together, making a hair-raising tearing sound. Just as Li Meng was about to continue observing, the black hole, like a giant mouth that had finished chewing, suddenly opened. A stream of blood-red air erupted from the massive black hole, spreading frantically in all directions. As this aura passed, the colors of the sky and earth became even more vivid red, the outlines of the square grids became deeper, and the blood spheres on the ground became more lifelike, with vein-like patterns appearing. The red air spread faster and faster, and before Li Meng could see clearly, it had already stained his body. Before Li Meng could react, the shadow ascetic potion began to tremble under this red aura, desperately dragging his astral body to escape the spirit world. This was the first time he had felt the potion's emotions. It was so real, just like the cells of his own body, transmitting fear from life's instincts. Li Meng closed his eyes and opened them again, having already appeared inside the hotel in Backland's North District. The shadow ascetic potion in his body was completely digested. It was distributed exceptionally evenly within Li Meng's body, making him feel as though it was a part of him, with no further need for acting or digestion. It was very thorough, with no side effects at all. It was even faster, more direct, and cleaner than when Li Meng prayed to number 4 to digest the listener potion. Glancing at the wall clock not far away, this complete digestion of the shadow ascetic potion had taken 3 minutes. It was so fast that Li Meng was caught off guard, and even felt a bit uneasy. I haven't even acted yet, how did you get digested? As for what that blood-red world actually was, Li Meng had some guesses but couldn't be certain. If every acting and digestion were this easy, he would surely be promoted before Klein and Lady Justice, maybe even becoming a sequence 0. However, although it seemed fast this time, it was actually full of danger. After all, a place that could scare a rampaging potion back into sanity and the real world was definitely no benevolent land. The spirit world is an abstraction and summary of reality and should be multicolored, but that place was completely dyed red, likely due to that giant abyssal mouth. One must know that at the low to mid sequences, except for certain special pathways, other beyonders can at most gain some information and omens by sensing the spirit world. Only at the saint level can one travel relatively safely within the spirit world. This is partly because the spirit world is too dangerous, with a large number of spirit world creatures that are extremely powerful compared to living beings in the real world, and most of them are not friendly to humans. On the other hand, it's due to the complexity of the spirit world itself. Without enough knowledge, one cannot locate the correct direction and address in the spirit world, and a single mistake could lead to some forbidden land, causing one to disappear forever. As for changing the ecological environment of the spirit world, Li Meng estimated it would require at least the power of an angel or even a deity. That his body could enter the spirit world so easily was something Li Meng hadn't expected himself. This was partly because the shadow ascetic potion went out of control and dragged his astral body into the spirit world, and partly because he had joined the tarot club. He frequently traveled long distances, so he was familiar with the road. With the digestion of the shadow ascetic potion, a practical problem lay before him. That was the potion materials for Rose Bishop. He still had no leads on them. The value of the main materials for a sequence 6 potion is over £1,000. Often, even if one has the money, they might not be able to buy the corresponding formula. Li Meng turned his gaze to the number 9998 Scholar's book lying on the bed. It had now returned to how it looked when he first left the Forsaken Land of the Gods, an ordinary history book. No matter what Li Meng wrote, the white words no longer appeared. The potion formula should be real, such knowledge can easily be verified. Only those rituals of mysterious origin are where the true danger lies. He estimated the threat the scholar's book posed to him and decided he had to continue using it. Having a cheat might result in a miserable death, but not having one will definitely lead to a miserable death. This is why many transmigrators continue to cooperate with grandfathers, even if they know they have ill intentions. Because everyone knows that in a world with miraculous powers, hard work is worth so little. Regardless of whether he was a transmigrator or not, getting stronger first was always the right move. Li Meng put away the book, picked up the shepherd's gloves from the floor, checked out of the room, and took the metro to leave the North District. Backland Bridge District, Iron Gate Street, the entrance to the Tassoc River from the Bridge District sewer. This place had been turned into a herb garden, with a thin figure moving back and forth inside. Wearing a set of blue dockworker clothes with a raincoat and rain boots, number 9521 was holding a hoe, digging furrows into a piece of newly reclaimed black soil to allow the dirty sewer water to better irrigate the area. This was the new job Li Meng had found for him, helping the apothecary Duckwell reclaim land in the sewers and plant herbs. Because the environment was harsh and various fierce sewer creatures roamed about, the danger was high. Li Meng even helped him buy a handgun and several rounds of ammunition. As payment, number 9521 had to give half of his income to Li Meng. According to the agreement between Li Meng and the fat apothecary Duckwell, number 9521 would assist him in managing these sewer herb fields, and the apothecary would pay half of the medicine sales income to number 9521. The more they worked, the more they earned. From then on, number 9521 began his happy career of sewer reclamation. This was his most satisfactory job since leaving the barnacle and seaweed ship repair yard. Being able to go to and from work freely, having enough to eat, and even having an income of at least £10 per week made him feel as if he were in heaven, not caring at all about the stench of the sewer. In a month's time, he had already reclaimed all the diggable areas in the nearby sewers. His next plan was to leave the Iron Gate Street sewer and dig further into the Backland Bridge district. To make entering and exiting the sewer easier, he even cleared away the moss and various filth from the entrance. The foreign objects from the sewer were either carried out or used by him as fertilizer for the herb fields. Just as he was excitedly preparing to reclaim more herb fields to earn more pounds, he suddenly saw a chubby black figure appear on his herb field in the distance. The boots on the shadow's feet stepped on the newly sprouted herbs, causing number 9521 a pang of heartache. According to his agreement with Duckwell, such a herb could be sold for at least 3 souls once grown. This person's one step had crushed nearly 1 pound of his income. He approached with his hoe raised, then sheepishly lowered it. Standing in front was Sheriff Hunter, wearing a black and white checkered uniform with 3 V's on his epaulets. He had a belly larger than a woman 9 months pregnant, and his skin was as fair and tender as a newborn baby's, making him look exceptionally conspicuous in the dark sewer. Seeing number 9521 approach, Sheriff Hunter spat a thick glob of phlegm onto a gloom grass that had just bloomed. The pale yellow bud of the gloom flower trembled, as if encountering an unbearable weight in its life. Chapter 147, Move again and I'll shoot. Who allowed you to dig around in the sewers? What if the dirty water flows elsewhere? Every inch of this land belongs to the king. Who gave you the right to plant things privately on the nation's soil? Sheriff Hunter took a step forward, stepping on the seedling again. His bloated belly almost pressed against No 9521's chest. Who are you? Where are you from? The sheriff's tone immediately reminded number 9521 of the shipyard overseer. He opened his mouth to speak but didn't know what to say. Seeing No 9521's reaction, Sheriff Hunter became even more certain. A few people have died in the sewers these past few days. Do you know about that? Was it your doing? The sheriff's voice trailed off with a long drawl, carrying a strong sense of oppression in his questioning, making number 9521 afraid to look up. I mean, you people, why can't you just let me have a good rest? I haven't slept well for days trying to solve this sewer body disposal case. I've even grown thin from hunger. The sheriff patted his belly as he spoke, making a thumping sound. If you don't explain yourself clearly today, you're coming with me to the police station. The people there aren't as easy to talk to as I am. Someone like you won't get out of there without losing a layer of skin. Number 9521 had never seen such a display, so he defended himself with a lack of confidence. I haven't seen any bodies. I saw this place was deserted, so I planted some herbs while I was at it. Before he could finish, Sheriff Hunter skillfully grabbed his arm and handcuffed him. Come to the police station and explain yourself properly. Number 9521 felt completely powerless. These herbs were growing well, and he would have been able to receive pounds after a while. If he saved up, he could buy a decent set of clothes, a house in a remote district, and then find a woman like number 3006 to have a clever child with. He would let them study hard at home while he dug out a few more medicinal fields in the sewers to save enough for their tuition at the Backland Technical School. After graduation, they could find a decent job in Hillsden District, like a doctor, accountant, or civil engineer. As for monitoring No. 9998, number 4 hadn't contacted him recently. It probably wasn't very important, so he could stop doing it in the future. But now that he was going to the police station, he didn't know when he'd get out. What if the herbs in the medicinal field withered? Would he have to compensate that fat apothecary for the losses then? Seeing number 9521 standing still, Sheriff Hunter coughed heavily, his voice becoming more casual. What are you growing here? It doesn't look like wheat. Number 9521 hesitated and said softly, these are medicinal ingredients. Someone asked me to help grow them. Sheriff Hunter placed his right hand on No 9521's shoulder, not minding the filth on his raincoat at all. These must be quite profitable, right? I thought it was just some wild vegetables planted by a vagrant. He said that once they're grown, they'll be made into herbs and sold, and I'll get half. It's only been over a month, so very few have matured. I've only received a dozen or so pounds. A sliver of a smile squeezed onto Sheriff Hunter's pale, fat face, making number 9521 feel inexplicably nauseated. I see you're so honest, you don't look like a murderer at all. Number 9521 quickly nodded vigorously. These sewers were built by the king's order. Planting herbs inside is certainly inappropriate. Sheriff Hunter looked at No 9521's confused gaze and patted his own fleshy chest. But I'm not such a rigid person. How about this, for £50 a month, you can plant whatever you want in the sewers near Iron Gate Street. But, no, buts. This price is already very cheap. If you met someone else, you'd definitely be spending the night in the detention center. Sheriff Hunter spat hard on the ground. Think about it. The sewers are so large, and you're so young. Work hard, and you'll surely make a fortune. What's £50? Remember to pay at the end of the month. In cash. I'll come to collect it. Number 9521 nodded blankly, but felt like he couldn't make this decision himself. Seeing him still hesitating, Sheriff Hunter patted his shoulder heavily again, making number 9521 tremble all over. Planting medicinal ingredients in the sewers is a good idea, but you must remember, even the sewers belong to the nation. Remember to pay on time. All right, I won't waste any more time, I have a major case to handle. Honestly, of all the places to dump a body, why the sewers? And they're making us search all the nearby sewers. Isn't that just a waste of effort? Sheriff Hunter rummaged through his belt, trying to find the key to unlock No 9521's handcuffs. Remember to pay early every month. This month is almost over, so I'll give you a break this once. Just give me £20. Don't be so nervous. We will never wrong an innocent person, nor will we let a bad one go. Number 9521 trembled even more violently, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. Following his fearful gaze, Sheriff Hunter turned his head. At the sewer entrance not far away, a mangled corpse lay on the ground. Right pointing arrow. The corpse's chest had been violently torn open, the internal organs were mangled, and a large amount of blood flowed slowly from beneath the body, staining the nearby grayish-black sewage blood red. Not far from the corpse, a person in a blue samurai suit stood quietly in the shadows of the sewer. Their long hair was tied in a samurai bun at the back of their head, and their right hand held a slender rapier, looking like an ancient warrior stepping out of history. It was indeed Vice Admiral Hurricane Kilangos. On his left hand was a black glove, covered in bloodstains. Seeing this, Sheriff Hunter couldn't help but swallow. He struggled to unholster a revolver from the leather holster under his arm. Kilangos, in his blue samurai suit, watched him draw the gun quietly, showing no intention of fleeing or stopping him, waiting until the sheriff's revolver was pointed at his head. Drop your weapon and put your hands on your head, or I'll shoot. Sheriff Hunter's voice was trembling slightly. It felt less like he was warning the other person and more like the other person was warning him. Why'd I run into a policeman just for dumping a body? Kilangos felt he was truly down on his luck. Having just entered Backland, he had killed a vagrant and dumped him in the sewer because the wriggling hunger needed feeding. Just as he was leaving the sewer, he had inexplicably ended up in a fight with a passerby who was trying to close a manhole cover. Most importantly, he hadn't killed that passerby and was even forced to feed the flesh and blood of one of his own arms to the wriggling hunger, which made it highly likely his identity would be exposed. And now, he was just dumping a body, yet he actually encountered a policeman. Vice Admiral Hurricane had killed countless people on the high seas, and no one had ever dared to interfere, let alone a policeman. Don't move. Move again and I'll shoot. Sheriff Hunter warned loudly, though even number 9521 could hear his voice trembling. Seeing the man opposite him completely ignoring him, the sheriff could no longer endure his inner fear. He frantically pulled the trigger at the man's head. Bang bang bang, bang bang bang. The sheriff emptied all 6 bullets in the cylinder in one breath. He hurriedly fumbled at his belt, trying to find more bullets to reload. Entrusting your life to such a useless iron box will only result in a more miserable death. A wave of malicious mockery rang in the sheriff's ears, and he realized his body could no longer move. He saw a pair of hands unbuttoning his police uniform and unbuckling his nearly 2-meter-long belt. No, this was Sheriff Hunter's last thought in the world. A sharp, piercing pain tore through his brain. The sheriff's naked body fell heavily into the sewer sludge, his pale skin becoming filthy. Will this overstuff the wriggling hunger? Looking at the body on the ground that resembled a fat pig, Kilangos frowned slightly before finally raising the black glove. A horrific chewing sound echoed in the dark sewer. Only then did Kilangos turn his attention to the handcuffed young man nearby. The youth's legs were visibly trembling, preventing him from running away. You killed someone. He's a policeman in charge of this street, no one dares to touch him. Watching Kilangos walk slowly toward him, No 9521's voice began to stutter. How did you change? You're not that policeman. Who are you? I think changing my identity might make things more convenient. Number 9521 watched as the man in the blue samurai suit took off his clothes in front of him, revealing a belly as large as the sheriff's and skin just as pale. His face distorted and melted like a candle. When it solidified again, it looked exactly like the deceased Sheriff Hunter. Kilangos bent down to pick up the revolver from the ground, ejected the empty shells, and casually gestured with it at No 9521's head. I really don't see the use of this thing. Although he had seen that the bullets were exhausted, number 9521 still felt waves of deathly fear. Don't kill me. I'll give you my money. I already have over £12. Kilangos's lips twitched slightly. He then tucked the revolver into the underarm holster, rummaged through the sheriff's clothes, found the key to the handcuffs, and threw it on the ground. Unlock them yourself and follow me out. Don't think about running, or I'll turn you into a corpse just like this one. Number 9521 followed Kilangos's gesture and saw that the sheriff's corpse looked as if it had been bitten by a pack of extremely cruel beasts. The skin and flesh had completely vanished, leaving only clumps of yellow and white unidentified matter. Let's go. I know you're a Beander. A white light shone from Kilangos's glove, igniting the corpse. Sheriff Hunter began to burn rapidly, sizzling. Soon, he turned into a pile of black ash, drifting into the sewage found everywhere in the sewers. The sewage flowed slowly, converging at the Iron Gate Street exit and flowing into the surging Tassoc River, disappearing completely. Chapter 148. Our desires are the desires of the potions within our bodies. On George Street in Backland Queen District, there were rows of extremely small villas. They lacked the standard noble amenities like stables, gardens, or ballrooms, consisting only of servant quarters. Strictly speaking, they were merely small buildings. Open black lens bracket. Remember this site's domain, Taiwan Novel Network. It's super easy to use, enjoy anytime. Close black lens bracket. Even so, their annual rent remained as high as over £100, serving as the final refuge for those destitute nobles. For the vast majority of nobles, moving out of Backland, even just leaving Empress Borough and the North District, meant completely losing their noble social circle and becoming so-called country folk. Living in such a place, everyone harbored hope, even if they were destitute and couldn't even guarantee their basic needs. They still felt they could rely on the big shots living next door. As long as they seized an opportunity, they could rise again. This made them attractive not only to the collateral descendants of great nobles and destitute minor nobles but also to wealthy merchants from all over the northern continent, as well as various socialites and courtesans. Since the repeal of the Grain Act, there were more and more bankrupt landed nobles, making these small villas increasingly sought after, even causing the quiet George Street to become briefly bustling. Among these villas, a 3-story building with over a dozen carriages parked at its entrance was particularly eye-catching. Because the house was too small and there were too many carriages, some were even parked in front of the neighbors' doors, drawing a round of scolding from the servants next door. From a carriage near the villa's main entrance, a black-haired young man jumped down and looked at the coachman with slight dissatisfaction. "The letter I wrote to Miss Elena, did you deliver it yesterday?" The gray-haired coachman, who was dozing off against the carriage, was woken by the voice and replied impatiently. "Young master, her house has no servants at all. I knocked for a long time and no one opened the door, so I just dropped the letter into the mailbox." The young man suddenly became angry, his handsome features even twisting slightly. "Didn't I tell you that you must deliver the letter in person? And the gift, did she accept it?" The coachman still looked impatient. "I stuffed that in the mailbox too." "Oh, that mailbox seemed to be full, it took some effort to squeeze it in." Hearing the coachman's words, the young man almost fainted from anger. He walked to the mailbox and bent down, wanting to see if his things were still there. Just as he was trying to use his fingers to poke through the thin slit of the mailbox opening, a young man with golden hair finally couldn't watch any longer. He jumped down from a nearby carriage and covered the mailbox slot. "Ah, Black, what are you doing? There are also our letters inside. Do you want to take them out too?" The golden-haired young man spoke in a clumsy, unskilled runic script, which sounded laughable, but the black-haired Black had no intention of laughing. He looked at him coldly, words bursting through his teeth. "You Intis bastard, thinking you can steal a Loan woman from us. Don't even think about it." The Intis man wasn't angry at all after hearing his words. Instead, he very heartily tried to grab his hand, but Black shook him off and dodged. "Black, have you heard Emperor Russell's famous saying? People who feel a connection will meet even if they are 1,000 miles apart. People who don't feel a connection will find it hard to even hold hands even if they live on the same street. You live so close to her, yet she ignores you, it means she doesn't like you." Black's features became even more distorted. Looking at the sun-like smile on the young man's face, he found it increasingly detestable and even wanted to slap him. Just as he thought this, his hand moved on its own. A bright red palm print immediately appeared on the young Intis man's face, looking particularly striking under the late summer sun. Black was also startled by his own action and froze on the spot. The Intis man clearly hadn't expected to receive this slap either. He clutched his face, failing to react for a moment. However, Black's coachman suddenly perked up and leapt down from the carriage with an agility that didn't look like an old man's at all. "This gentleman from Intis, please forgive our young master's recklessness. He only saw Miss Elena once at a banquet and became completely infatuated. He won't listen to anyone, as if he's possessed. The master ordered me to follow him, fearing he'd cause trouble. If you're still upset, just give him 2 slaps back, I promise I won't stop you." The coachman even made a "please" gesture to the golden-haired young man, leaving the Intis man dazed and unable to strike back for a moment. From a window on the second floor of the villa, a pair of eyes watched the scene below through a gap in the thin curtains, and then contentedly lowered their right hand. No. 3006 Elena lay in a rocking chair not far away, her fair legs resting on the dressing table, her expression relaxed and comfortable. Number 3333, what's so interesting about this? There are always this many people here every day, coming rain or shine. You used Beander powers on them. When did the Demoness Pathway's abilities become so powerful? No. 3333 Aphia stepped out from the shadows of the curtains. Now, she was wrapped entirely in a pitch-black cloak, her face hidden under a black hood, making it impossible to see any expression. She looked like a medieval assassin. If I were to use Beander powers casually in Empress Burrow, the me you see might already be a sealed artifact. Number 3006 casually picked up a glass of red wine from a tray on the dressing table and took a light sip. Actually, I just slightly mentioned my large savings and my business in Bayam at a banquet, describing my luxurious lifestyle, and the young men of Backland came flocking to my door. After all, where else could one find such a good deal where they get both the person and the money? You, as a desire apostle, still have a lot to learn about manipulating desires. Aphia's face twitched slightly. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, she suddenly began to cough violently, bright red blood seeping from the corners of her mouth. Who injured you like this? Was it the church? Do you need me to find a doctor to treat you? Alina's voice was filled with immense concern and care, yet her body remained motionless on the rocking chair. If the church had found out, I definitely wouldn't have led their people here. I encountered an angel of the devil pathway, they are good at disguising themselves. I don't trust anyone, so I could only come to you. We agreed back then not to meet again, but I have nowhere else to go. That angel's aura, even if it was just a projection, damaged my spirit body, making me very unstable now. I might die in some sewer at any moment. AFIA had only said a few words before she started coughing again. Does number 4 know? Alina's slender brows furrowed together, as if she had encountered a difficult decision. I'm not sure. I haven't contacted him in a long time. AFIA coughed, her voice becoming even weaker. It's truly unbelievable that you could escape from an angel. You truly are the most powerful avatar below the level of a demigod. Is this the power that the devil named Farbati brought to you? Alina finally sat up from the rocking chair, her voice turning serious. Yes, but according to my observations, Farbati's power is waning, or rather, it's not as powerful as it boasted. Otherwise, if that angel had sensed my aura, it wouldn't have attacked me. AFIA snapped her fingers at the group of young men outside the window. Those young men immediately became even more restless and started arguing again for some absurd reason. Her voice also regained a bit of strength. When I met that devil back then, it knew my identity but didn't care at all. It even claimed it could help me separate this identity, so I would no longer be an avatar, as long as I offered devout faith. I've only ever mentioned this to you. You succeeded. Alina stood up from her chair and examined AFIA closely, as if looking at a stranger she had never met before. With one strike from that angel, the worm of time inside my body was shattered. It saved my life. Afia's voice suddenly became exceptionally cold and calm. This is the freedom I wanted, but not in the way I desired. I don't know now if my decision was correct. That doesn't sound like you. Among the batch of avatars that walked out of the forsaken land of the gods back then, your will was the most resolute. Alina reached out and gently squeezed No. 3333 Afia's arm. I had always been looking for ways to break free from the identity of Amon's avatar. Back then, I had goals and motivation. But when it actually happened, I felt a sense of emptiness and loneliness, not even knowing where to go next. Don't think too much. Look out the window, there are so many men, I'll share a few with you. Alina said in a half-joking tone, putting her arm around Afia's waist. That is a demoness's hobby. For a desire apostle, the best thing in the world is naked, undisguised desire. Afia's body became translucent, and Alina's hand passed right through the shadow. Don't be so boring. Luckily I chose the demoness pathway back then. If I had chosen the same pathway as you, I think I would have lost control long ago. Alina said with a slight complaint. No, we are avatars, manufactured avatars. Our thoughts come from the spirit contained within the potion. Our every move is governed by the potion, we have no free will of our own. Our desires are the desires of the potions within our bodies. AFIA glanced at the crowded carriages and the onlookers still standing there, and a relaxed smile suddenly surfaced on her face. Is your place safe? There's a guy over there looking this way with a telescope, looking quite interested. Ignore them, it happens all the time. Alina casually pulled the curtains shut, closing the final gap and causing the people outside holding telescopes to sigh in disappointment. Chapter 149, Professional. Returning to No. 7 Iron Gate Street, Li Meng habitually glanced at the room where number 9521 lived and found it empty. The room was tidied up neatly, with stacks of books arranged on the desk, covered in a very thin layer of dust. Li Meng waved his hand, driving the dust out of the window. It seemed number 9521 hadn't returned for a few days, he didn't know where he had gone. Perhaps he was staying with the apothecary, or maybe number 4 had assigned him a new mission. Next time, I'll ask the apothecary Duckwell at the Old Gentleman Eye of Wisdom's gathering. Li Meng closed the doors and windows, left No 9521's room, and entered No 3333's room opposite. The dust here was thicker, clearly showing Li Meng's footprints. The room was empty, save for the bamboo basket AFIA had brought to sell matches, which contained a few pieces of her old clothes. Open black lens bracket. Remember this site's domain name. Look for Taiwan Novel Network for reading Taiwan novels. Super awesome. Close black lens bracket. Number 3333 had never returned. After these avatars entered Backland, They were like fish from a stream entering the vast ocean, perhaps they would never have the chance to meet again. Returning to his own room, it was also covered in a layer of dust. This time, to evade Kilangos, Li Meng had changed hotels several times across the North District, Hillsden District, West District, and Sherwood Borough. Feeling that Kilangos should no longer be able to track him and might even have left Backland, he decided to return to No. 7 Iron Gate Street to attend the Beander gathering of the Old Gentleman Eye of Wisdom to see if he could find the materials he wanted and sell some items. There was also the medullary crystals of the Fountain of Elves that Duckwell needed. How to safely transport it to Backland was a problem that required face-to-face consultation to resolve. A damp sea breeze blew from the Tassoc River into the window of Li Meng's room, wiping the dust on the floor and walls clean. The wind blast's ability was always the most useful for maintaining indoor cleanliness and hygiene. Li Meng took out a copy of the Backland Morning Post and found an advertisement for Ernst business firm purchasing goods on the 5th page. This was the contact method given by Eye of Wisdom after attending several gatherings. The quotes were, flour 5 penny per liter, butter 3 sol pound, lard 3 penny pound, cream 2 sol 3 penny pound, marquee black tea leaves 8 sol pound. According to the agreement, this required 5 heavy knocks and 3 light knocks, with a timing interval of 3 long and 2 short. Li Meng noted down the corresponding code on paper, set the newspaper aside, and took out a letter with a Pritz postmark. Judging by the date, it had been in the mailbox for a while. There was no sender's name or address on the letter. He could only judge from the postmark that it might have been sent from Pritzport. Li Meng gently tore open the envelope along the seal and took out a sheet of white stationery. The slightly distorted handwriting on it allowed Li Meng to recognize at a glance that it was written by No. 9521. I'm going to be a pirate and make a fortune. The words were written in a hurry and were very scribbly, yet a hint of pride could be read from them. Number 9521 has finally seen the light. Looking at the letter, Li Meng suddenly felt a hint of melancholy. That honest and simple Amon's avatar had finally awakened the temperament belonging to Amon. After a long while, he folded the letter and prepared to put it into the bookcase against the wall. The moment he casually pulled out a book, his pupils suddenly contracted. Someone had been in his room. This person might have had extremely high skills, or perhaps they entered right after he left, so no footprints were left. However, the books in the bookcase seemed to have been rummaged through. To expand his knowledge, Li Meng had once purchased some ancient books written in Hermes language, Jotun, and Dragonese from the Eye of Wisdom. Among these books, for the purpose of cross-referencing content, several were placed together, but now their order was messed up, and the content inside was completely unrelated. The thief wanted to rummage for money but found nothing. As for how they could enter a room with locked doors and windows, having experienced the Beander world, he was already used to such things. Li Meng quickly reached a conclusion. For safety's sake, he finally pulled out his shepherd's gloves. No. 9998. The last person to enter the room. The last person to enter the room. Since there was no information or related items of the intruder, it was difficult to perform divination, so he could only use his decryption ability as a cryptologist. The room gradually became dark and cold. All objects began to look abstract, and even the colors began to overlap. Layers of phantoms merged together, like a nearsighted person taking off their glasses and looking at rows of lights in the distance. This was the cryptologist tracing back time through subtle disturbances in the spirit world, decrypting the past to obtain the truth. Li Meng watched as the dust in the room gradually faded until it was the same as when he had just left. A faint, almost invisible trail of footprints appeared on the floor, extending from the window to every corner of the room. The bed, the table, the bookcase, the wardrobe, the gas lamp, and the metal pipes. Seeing that the footprints even extended under the bed, Li Meng couldn't help but feel a hint of guilt. To let such a serious worker get nothing was simply too cruel. As more footprints appeared, the cryptologist could decrypt more. A gray figure appeared on the ground, his features were blurred, and his movements were agile. He leapt lightly from the window and headed straight for the bookcase without the slightest hesitation, rummaging through it. The gray figure even picked up each book and shook it by the spine, but unfortunately, he found nothing. In the end, he could only helplessly restore them to their original state, but since he couldn't understand the text in those ancient books, the intruder could only stack them together randomly. He walked back and forth in the room, checking every corner where pounds might be hidden, even turning over and feeling through the bedding. After a full hour of searching, the gray figure came up empty-handed. He just took a look around the room to check if everything was restored to its original state, then nimbly opened the window and flipped out. The window latch, under the influence of several thin threads, clicked back into place on its own. From start to finish, the feeling the gray figure left Li Meng with was just one word: professional. It didn't even care about gain or loss, only striving to perform the theft to the best of its ability, not overlooking any blind spot or potential target. However, that slightly thin figure made Li Meng involuntarily think of the mysterious thief he had encountered on his first day in Backland. He hoped it would find something in someone else's house, so as not to waste such diligent effort. This decryption ritual took a full hour, almost completely consuming Li Meng's spirituality. This was also the first time he truly used the decryption ability of a dream stealer's soul to restore events that had occurred in history. Although the final result was just a false alarm for Li Meng, he was still very satisfied with the effect of this ritual. Chapter 150, Fate Displacement. At the easternmost edge of the Sunia Sea lies a terrifying expanse of ocean, perpetually shrouded in mist and ruins. In the deepest part of this mist, a young man wearing a classical black robe and a matching pointed soft hat, with curly black hair, black eyes, a broad forehead, and thin cheeks, his face adorned with a crystal monocle, held a brass sextant in his left hand as he walked steadily across the howling, storm-tossed waves. The whistling winds and surging giant waves crashed against him, yet his clothes remained without a single water stain. Behind him followed an old man who looked exactly like him, the only difference being that he did not wear a monocle and instead carried a staff the length of an arm on his back. Behind the old man followed a red-haired youth who was laboriously swimming through the ocean, struggling to lift his head to look at the patterns on the soles of the two people in front of him, appearing quite disheveled. Even though a Beyander of the Hunter pathway possessed a strong physique and excelled at wilderness survival, after swimming for a full day, his limbs were now somewhat weak. Watching number 23 and No 1011 walk easily through the storm ahead, No 7773's arms suddenly gave out, and he instantly vanished from the surface, sinking like a stone into the depths of the sea. Number 23 and No 1011 continued forward, never looking back. Before long, number 7773 poked his head out from under the water again, spat out a mouthful of seawater, and continued swimming forward. Perhaps feeling a bit of pity, No 1011 turned his head and said with a hint of comfort, "We're almost there. If you can't hold on, just wait for us here. We'll come back to pick you up once we've handled things." Number 7773 seemed to remember something extremely terrifying. He shook his head vigorously, paddled his arms fiercely, and caught up with No. 1011. "It's not that we don't want to help you, it's just that this place is too special. The cost of distorting rules is exceptionally high, and we might face a fierce battle, so we can't waste spirituality here. Besides, isn't the Hunter pathway particularly strong at wilderness survival? Just consider it part of your acting. I am now a conspirer, an expert who uses his brain to weave conspiracies and schemes, not a hunter who needs to get his hands dirty." Without hearing No 7773's internal scream, No 1011 took the staff from his back, his body suddenly blurring. In the next second, he had already appeared behind No. 23. "How is it? Has the sextant changed?" "No, I haven't been able to contact number 4. We can only go to his temple to see exactly what happened." Number 23 didn't look back, his voice quickly dissipating in the violent storm. The three passed through a wave as tall as a wall, and the sea before them transformed into the appearance of being illuminated by the midday sun, faintly tinged with a layer of gold. A dazzling golden speck of light grew larger and larger before them. Under the sunlight, that speck refracted a shimmering, dreamlike, multi-colored brilliance, like a giant, transparent gemstone. It first split and then became clear. It turned out to be 4 massive pillars carved from pure diamond. They were like the sea-supporting giant towers of myth and legend, extending downward and standing firmly to support a sizable floating island. Upon the floating island, the soil was scorched black, without a hint of green. Deep within it, the light was extraordinarily bright, surpassing the midday sky. Suddenly, a long neigh echoed from within. The sound was loud and unrestrained, but it lacked the kind of danger that would make one's hair stand on end. With the sound of galloping hooves, two steeds that seemed forged from gold charged out of the floating island, pulling a similarly golden, magnificent chariot behind them. Number 23 and No 1011 practically lowered their heads, ensuring their gaze did not directly contact the golden chariot. No 1011 also happened to step on No 7773's head, pushing him underwater so he couldn't see what was happening on the surface. This is the place, Father's palace from when he was alive. Number 4 should still be inside. Number 23 glanced at the brass sextant, the scale on it hadn't changed in the slightest. Let's go. Number 7773, are you coming with us or waiting on the island below? As soon as No 1011 finished speaking, number 7773 immediately surfaced and grabbed his leg. Take me up, don't leave me here. His voice was urgent and powerful, as if he would die the moment he left them. Number 23 gave a dissatisfied hum and raised the bronze sextant high. Positions of other nearby avatars. As No 23's voice rang out, the rust-covered telescope on the sextant began to turn slowly, and the various reflecting lenses below changed angles accordingly. A few seconds later, the moving mirror stopped rotating, and the drum pushed the vernier caliper to stop at a tiny scale mark. Number 23 glanced at it and read out the data, 23 degrees north latitude, 7,500 meters. No 1011 took down his staff, and number 7773 quickly swam close to him. Gray mist enveloped the old man, his staff, and the two people surrounding him. The staff transformed into a giant key within the gray mist. Under No 1011's control, it pointed away from the island ahead. The key grew longer and longer, extending into the depths of the spirit world to lead them to their final destination through it. Just as the key continued forward, the colors before them suddenly became more abstract, and clusters of brightly colored, unidentified objects appeared in the abstract sky and earth of the spirit world. The gray key began to twist and deform, pointing toward even more mysterious depths of the spirit world. Right pointing arrow. An error has occurred here, the destination of the wanderer's staff has been misled. Number 23 pinched the monocle on his right eye, and those brightly colored unidentified objects were instantly sucked into the monocle, allowing the key to return to normal. Number 4's power is waning. Previously, without his permission, even a subsidiary god could not enter through these errors. We need to hurry. The gray key suddenly vanished, and the three appeared on a mist-filled small island. The soil beneath their feet seemed to have endured intense burning, turning pitch black. In some places, the protruding earth had even been fired into colorful glazed glass. In the very center of the island stood a heavily damaged palace. Countless marks of sword cuts and axe hews appeared on the walls, along with various traces of lightning strikes and fire, carving a golden palace into a gray ruin. Holding the sextant, number 23 walked at the front, leading everyone toward the depths of the ruins. Number 7773 looked around and spotted a broken bronze spear thrust diagonally into the black earth, its shaft still entwined with speckles of golden yellow. He couldn't take his eyes off it after just one glance. Although no spirituality radiated from the spear, he could still feel that this item was extraordinary. Just a moment ago, he had tested the soil beneath his feet. Even with all his strength, he couldn't leave a single mark on this seemingly fertile and soft earth. Yet this spear was just casually stuck there. Noticing No 7773's lingering gaze, No 1011 coughed lightly and reminded him in a low voice, "That is the spear the god of combat used to slay Father." Although it is essentially just an ordinary spear, items influenced by a deity's authority are not things we can touch, let alone one stained with Father's blood. Number 7773 could only helplessly withdraw his gaze and continue following No. 1011. Along the way, he saw various blood-stained arrows, broken blades and spears, and all sorts of destroyed weapons scattered throughout the ruins. Noticing No 23's increasingly hostile gaze, number 7773 could only abandon his thoughts and follow behind them dejectedly. Following the readings on the sextant, number 23 threaded through the dilapidated palace and finally found a relatively intact hall. An ancient wall clock was embedded in the palace wall. The doors were wide open, and the interior was pitch black, obscuring everything. I came, I saw, I recorded. Just as number 7773 thought he was about to be sent ahead to scout, No 1011 stepped forward. A gray ancient book was flipped open, and from a page depicting the sun and its radiance, a golden fireball rose. The massive fireball wobbled as it flew into the palace interior, illuminating everything clearly. Number 4 sat on a high back chair in the center, his eyes tightly closed, as motionless as a statue. Number 7773 also noticed that number 4's monocle, the standard equipment for an Amon thief pathway avatar, was missing. In number 4's left hand, he held a giant key of a strange shape. The tip of the key dragged on the golden floor like a dagger, and it was entwined with strands of dried, red-black blood vessels. Those blood vessels seemed to have a life of their own, constantly wriggling on the key, trying to completely envelop it. Under the golden light, the blood vessels seemed startled and suddenly contracted, revealing the key's original form. The smooth, shiny surface had already been corroded into speckled pits. If this continued, the key would completely disappear before long. Legend has it that every angel-level avatar possesses a sealed artifact powerful enough to rival a true god. It seems this is the sealed artifact number 4 holds. A strange smile appeared on No 23's face. He pinched the monocle on his right eye, pouring his entire body's spirituality into it, and a gray, invisible hand gradually took shape within the monocle. In the next second, that gray hand reached for the key. Just as the fingertips of the gray hand were about to touch the key, they suddenly changed direction and grabbed number 4, who was sitting on the high back chair. In No 23's eyes, number 4's cruel smile suddenly surfaced. In the next instant, he and number 4 had swapped bodies. Number 23 was now sitting on the high back chair, holding the key of fate tracing in his hand. Just now, using No 23's hand of deception as a medium, number 4 had launched a fate theft, performing a displacement between his fate and No 23's fate. Number 23 would take his place, holding the key of fate tracing and accepting a cruel fate of being polluted and corroded. And this was a fate number 23 could not resist. This perfectly complied with number 0's rule: avatars must not harm one another. Number 23, now seated on the high back chair, had just realized what had happened when the blood vessels entwined around the key of fate tracing instantly found a new target. They followed his arm to rapidly take root in his etheric body and astral body, and even began to invade his spirit body. This power was extremely frenzied and depraved, even more powerful than No. 0. Within a few breaths, No 23's consciousness began to blur, and in his eyes, there was only number 4's mocking gaze. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.